The desert sun beat down mercilessly on the Nevada tarmac, its heat shimmering in waves that distorted the horizon. Inside the cockpit of the sleek F-35 Lightning II, Captain Catherine Kate Harrison felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came before every flight, a mixture of anticipation and raw focus that had defined her life since her father first put her in the pilot's seat of a Cessna at age 12. Today's demonstration would push both her and the aircraft to their absolute limits. The control tower's voice crackled through her headset, calm and professional, granting clearance for what would become the flight that changed everything. She had no idea that within hours, the world she knew would shatter completely. Then the sleek silhouette of the F-35 Lightning II materialized against the pale blue Nevada sky, a metallic predator slicing through wisps of cloud. Inside the cockpit, Captain Catherine Kate Harrison inhaled deeply as her gloved fingers tightened around the control stick. Her eyes narrowed behind the visor of her helmet, focusing on the horizon, where the jagged mountains met the endless desert. "Phoenix 1, you are cleared for demonstration maneuver." The calm voice of the control tower crackled through her headset. Kate responded with practiced precision, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Roger that, Control. Phoenix 1 commencing demonstration." With a subtle movement of her wrist, she sent the F-35 into a vertical climb. The G-force pressed her against the seat as the aircraft rocketed upward at nearly twice the speed of sound. The blue sky darkened above her, the curvature of the earth becoming visible at the edges of her vision. The altimeter numbers climbed rapidly, 40,000 feet, 45,000, 50,000. At the apex of her climb, Kate rolled the aircraft 180 degrees until she was flying inverted, suspended above the world. For a heartbeat, she hung there, as if time itself had paused to witness what came next. Then, with a precision born from thousands of hours in the air, she pulled back on the stick. The F-35 responded instantly, arcing downward in a perfect Immelman turn. The G-forces mounted, 4, 5, 6 Gs, crushing her chest, threatening to drain the blood from her brain. Kate executed the AGSM breathing technique, tightening her leg and abdominal muscles as she forced air from her lungs against a closed glottis. Hook, 2, 3, hook, 2, 3. She counted in her mind, fighting to maintain consciousness as the G-meter climbed to 9G, 9 times her body weight pressing against her. Most pilots would have blacked out. But Catherine Harrison wasn't most pilots. The desert floor rushed toward her at terrifying speed before she pulled out of the dive with millimeter precision, leveling just 2,000 feet above the ground. She banked hard right, then executed a flawless Cobra maneuver, transitioning immediately into a controlled flat spin that showcased both the aircraft's capabilities and her extraordinary skill. In the observation deck of Nellis Air Force Base, a group of senior officers watched with undisguised admiration. Among them stood Colonel William Bill Davidson, a weathered man of 58, whose silver hair contrasted with the darkness of his flight suit. His arms were crossed over his chest, a small smile of pride lifting the corners of his mouth. "God damn," whispered a younger officer beside him. "How does she control the aircraft like that? I've never seen anyone fly with that kind of precision at those G-loads." Colonel Davidson's eyes never left the F-35 as it danced across the sky. "Because she's a Harrison," he said simply. "Flying isn't what she does, it's who she is." Kate completed the demonstration with a low-altitude, high-speed pass directly over the runway, pulling up at the last possible moment in a move that made several observers instinctively duck. She rolled the aircraft 360 degrees as she climbed, a final flourish before bringing the F-35 around for a textbook landing. As the wheels touched down and the thrust reversers engaged, Kate allowed herself the briefest moment of satisfaction. Then professionalism took over as she taxied to the designated area and began the shutdown procedure. When she finally removed her helmet and climbed down from the cockpit, the Nevada sun beat down on her face. She was 32, with deep brown eyes that missed nothing and dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. Years in the cockpit had etched fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the mark of a pilot who had stared into too many suns, faced too many horizons. Colonel Davidson approached as she completed her post-flight checks, his stride purposeful across the tarmac. "Not bad for an old man's daughter," he said with a grin. Kate returned the smile, her professional demeanor softening slightly. William Davidson had been her father's closest friend, his wingman during the Gulf War, and her unofficial guardian after her father's death. I think you mean not bad, period. Davidson laughed. Fair enough, Kate. You flew that bird like you were born in the cockpit. Something flashed in Kate's eyes. A distant memory, bittersweet. According to my father, I practically was. The mention of her father, Lieutenant Colonel Robert Harrison, brought a momentary silence between them. Robert had been a legend in the Air Force, a pilot whose natural abilities had seemed almost supernatural. His F-15 Eagle had been shot down over Iraq a decade ago, the wreckage so thoroughly destroyed that they'd never recovered his body. For Kate, the sky had been both her inheritance and her refuge, the place where she felt closest to the man who had taught her to fly a Cessna at 12, who had shown her the stars from 30,000 feet, who had told her that fear was just a signal to focus, not to retreat. He'd be proud of you, Davidson said quietly. Prouder than you can imagine. Before Kate could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of a group of pilots crossing the tarmac toward them. Leading them was Major Richard "Rick" Thornton, tall, square-jawed, with the swagger of a man accustomed to being the best in the room. "Captain Harrison," he called out, his voice carrying the practiced charm that had never quite worked on Kate. "Impressive show, though I noticed you came in a little hot on that final turn." Kate met his gaze evenly. "Not hot, Major. Precise. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were pushing the envelope unnecessarily." His smile remained, but his eyes had hardened slightly. "We're testing aircraft here, not auditioning for air shows." Colonel Davidson cleared his throat. "That envelope pushing, as you call it, Major Thornton, is exactly why Captain Harrison has been selected to lead the new project." Rick's smile faltered. "What new project?" "You'll be briefed shortly," Davidson replied, checking his watch. "In fact, all of you need to report to Hangar 7 in 30 minutes, full security protocols." The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the gathered pilots. Hangar 7 was the most secure facility on base, reserved for only the most classified projects. Kate caught the flash of anger in Rick's eyes. Quickly masked, but unmistakable. He'd expected to be tapped for whatever was coming. As the highest-ranking pilot in the squadron, and with a record nearly as impressive as hers, his assumption wasn't unreasonable. "Yes, sir," Rick replied, his voice professionally neutral despite the tension in his jaw. "We'll be there." As the group dispersed, Kate felt a prickle at the back of her neck, the sensation she'd experienced in the air when ground-to-air defenses locked onto her aircraft. She turned to find Rick's eyes still on her, his expression unreadable. "Something on your mind, Major?" she asked. "Just wondering what makes you so special, Harrison." The words were soft, meant only for her ears. "Is it your skills, or is it your last name?" The implication stung. But Kate had faced far worse in her career. Female fighter pilots were still rare enough to draw extra scrutiny, extra criticism, extra doubt. She'd learned long ago not to give opponents the satisfaction of seeing a reaction. "I guess you'll find out in 30 minutes, she replied coolly. "Sir." She turned away, but not before seeing the flash of surprise in his eyes. Richard Thornton wasn't accustomed to people standing their ground against him. Kate made her way to the locker room to change, her mind already racing with possibilities. A classified project requiring top pilots usually meant either a new aircraft or a new weapon system, both prospects that quickened her pulse with anticipation. As she opened her locker, her eyes fell on the photograph taped inside the door, her father in his flight suit, standing beside his F-15, his arm around a much younger Kate. The desert sun had faded the image, but his smile remained vivid, confident, alive. "What would you think of all this, Dad?" she whispered to the photograph. "What would you tell me now?" She could almost hear his voice, the slight Texas drawl that emerged when he was being especially earnest. "Trust your instincts, Katie. They'll never steer you wrong." Katie, the childhood nickname only he had ever used. She touched the photograph briefly, then closed the locker and headed for the showers. 30 minutes later, Kate entered Hangar 7 alongside 11 other pilots, the elite of Nellis Air Force Base. The massive doors had closed behind them, sealing them in a space transformed from its usual purpose. The hangar lights were dimmed, and at the center stood something concealed beneath a massive tarp. Something with the unmistakable silhouette of an aircraft, but unlike any Kate had ever seen. At the front of the hangar stood a small group of senior officers and civilians. Colonel Davidson was there, along with General Thomas Bradley, the base commander. Beside them stood a slender Asian man in his 40s, wearing the awkward expression of someone more comfortable with equations than with people. "Ladies and gentlemen," General Bradley began once they were all assembled, "what you are about to see and hear is classified at the highest level. Nothing, absolutely nothing, leaves this room without direct authorization from me or from the Joint Chiefs." He nodded to an aide, who distributed electronic tablets to each of them. "Place your right thumb on the screen and state your full name," Bradley instructed. "You are digitally signing an enhanced security agreement. Violation of this agreement constitutes treason against the United States of America." The seriousness of his tone sent a wave of murmurs through the assembled pilots. This level of security was extraordinary, even by military standards. Kate pressed her thumb to the screen. "Captain Catherine Elizabeth Harrison, United States Air Force." The tablet beeped in acknowledgement, and she looked up to see General Bradley watching her with particular intensity. Their eyes met briefly before he turned back to address the group. "For the past 7 years, the United States Air Force, in conjunction with DARPA and several private contractors, has been developing the next generation of aerial combat platform." He gestured toward the tarp-covered shape. "Today, U-12 have been selected to become the first pilots to test and eventually deploy this platform." With a nod from the general, 4 technicians moved forward and pulled away the tarp. The aircraft revealed beneath the covering seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its lines were so smooth, so perfectly engineered, that the eye struggled to track its contours. Gone were the sharp angles of conventional stealth aircraft. This machine appeared almost organic, its surfaces flowing like liquid metal frozen in time. "This," General Bradley announced with undisguised pride, "is the XFA-44 Aurora, 6th-generation fighter with capabilities that will redefine aerial warfare for the next 50 years. Kate felt her breath catch. She'd heard rumors about the Aurora project, whispers of an aircraft that could reach the edge of space, that could outmaneuver anything in the sky. But those had been dismissed as aviation folklore, the modern equivalent of tales about the Foo Fighters of World War II. Yet here it stood before them, unmistakably real. "The Aurora can achieve speeds of Mach 3.5 in level flight," Bradley continued, "with a service ceiling of 100,000 feet. Its radar cross-section is less than that of a hummingbird. But what truly sets the Aurora apart is its integrated AI combat system." He gestured to the Asian man who stepped forward nervously. "This is Dr. Stephen Park, the lead architect of Athena, Advanced Tactical Helmet Enhanced Neural Assistance. Dr. Park, please explain." Dr. Park cleared his throat. "Athena represents a paradigm shift in how pilots interact with aircraft," he began, his voice gaining confidence as he moved into his area of expertise. "Traditional aircraft require the pilot to process information from multiple displays and systems. Athena creates a direct neural interface between pilot and aircraft through an enhanced helmet system." He held up what looked like a next-generation flight helmet, sleeker than the standard models, with fine circuitry visible beneath its surface. The helmet reads and amplifies the pilot's neural signals, allowing for control inputs through minimal physical movement or even thought patterns. Additionally, it provides countermeasures against extreme G-forces by modulating blood flow to the brain. Rick Thornton leaned forward, skepticism evident in his voice. "Are you saying this helmet lets pilots pull more Gs without blacking out?" "Substantially more," Dr. Park confirmed. "In simulation, test subjects have maintained full consciousness and combat effectiveness at sustained forces of up to 12 Gs. A low whistle came from somewhere in the group. 12 Gs was beyond what had been considered humanly possible to endure while remaining conscious. "The system also incorporates advanced situational awareness," Park continued. "Sensor data is fed directly to the visual cortex, creating an augmented reality display that appears as intuitive as natural vision. In essence, the aircraft becomes an extension of the pilot's body." Kate's mind raced with the implications. The limiting factor in most aerial combat wasn't the aircraft's capabilities, but the human inside it. A system that could push those human limits would change everything. "Why tell us all this?" asked one of the other pilots. "Why not just order us to fly it?" General Bradley's expression hardened slightly. "Because the Aurora is not just an aircraft. It's a commitment. The neural interface creates adaptations in the pilot's brain. These adaptations are permanent. Once you fly the Aurora with the Athena system, you cannot go back to conventional aircraft without significant retraining. A heavy silence fell over the hangar as the implications sank in. This is strictly volunteer, Bradley continued. Those who wish to decline may do so without prejudice to their record or career. Those who volunteer will begin an intensive 8-week training program, culminating in actual flight tests. You have 24 hours to decide. He nodded to Colonel Davidson, who stepped forward with a folder. Captain Harrison has been selected as squadron leader for this project, based on her exceptional performance records and demonstrated ability to adapt to new systems. Major Thornton will serve as her second in command. Kate kept her expression neutral, but she could feel Rick's eyes boring into her from across the room. The rivalry between them had just taken on an entirely new dimension. Any questions, General Bradley asked. One of the younger pilots raised his hand. Sir, what exactly is the Aurora designed to counter? What threat requires this level of advancement? Bradley exchanged a glance with Colonel Davidson before responding. 3 months ago, one of our surveillance satellites detected unusual activity at a remote location in the Taklamakan Desert. Subsequent intelligence revealed what appears to be a testing ground for advanced unmanned combat aerial vehicles, with stealth capabilities beyond anything officially deployed by any nation. He tapped a control, and a large screen descended from the ceiling. Satellite imagery appeared, showing an installation nestled between sand dunes, with what appeared to be aircraft hangars and a runway. We believe a non-state actor, a private military corporation called Prometheus, has acquired classified technology and is developing a drone air force capable of penetrating American air defenses. The Aurora program was accelerated in response to this emerging threat. Kate studied the images carefully. Something about the installation's layout struck her as oddly familiar, but she couldn't place why. These drones? She asked. Do you have any intel on their capabilities? Bradley nodded to an aide, who brought up another image, a blurry photograph taken from extreme distance, showing a dart-like shape in flight. Very limited, he admitted. We know they're fast, estimated Mach 2.5, and they appear to use some form of distributed sensor network rather than conventional radar. Most concerning is their apparent ability to operate in coordinated swarms without centralized control. Artificial intelligence, Kate murmured. Yes, Dr. Park confirmed, looking troubled. And potentially more advanced than our own. General Bradley concluded the briefing with logistics details about the training program. But Kate's mind was already elsewhere. She was mentally preparing, analyzing what she knew about neural interfaces and advanced flight systems, considering how her existing skills would translate. As the meeting broke up, the pilots gathered in small groups, discussing the revelation in hushed, excited tones. Kate found herself approached by Dr. Park, who seemed eager to speak with her specifically. Captain Harrison, he said, adjusting his glasses nervously, I've studied your flight telemetry data extensively. Your neural patterns during high-G maneuvers are exceptional. You maintain cognitive function at levels that should theoretically be impossible. Kate wasn't sure how to respond. Her ability to withstand G-forces had always been unusual, but she'd attributed it to rigorous training and perhaps good genetics. I just focus, she said simply. Park shook his head. It's more than that. The way your brain adapts to stress, it's precisely what we've been trying to engineer with Athena. You're already doing naturally what we've spent billions trying to achieve artificially. Before Kate could respond, she felt a presence behind her and turned to find Rick Thornton standing there, his expression carefully composed. Congratulations on the command, Captain, he said, his tone professionally cordial despite the tension evident in his posture. Quite an honor. Thank you, Major, she replied evenly. I look forward to working with you. Rick smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm sure you'll lead us well. After all, you were born for this, weren't you? The comment, with its implication that her selection had more to do with her family name than her abilities, hung in the air between them. Dr. Park, sensing the tension, excused himself awkwardly. Is there a problem, Major Thornton? Kate asked once they were alone. Rick stepped closer, lowering his voice. You know there is. I've got 300 more flight hours than you, a higher kill rate in simulated combat and seniority. But you get command because your last name is Harrison. Kate met his gaze steadily. My last name has nothing to do with it. My record speaks for itself. Does it? Or does having Colonel Davidson as your personal cheerleader speak louder? She felt a flash of anger, but kept it contained. I earned my place here, just like everyone else. If you have a problem with the command structure, take it up with General Bradley. Rick's jaw tightened. We both know that's not how this works. But don't worry, Harrison. I'll be a Model XO, right up until you give me reason not to be. He turned and walked away, leaving Kate with the distinct impression that she'd just acquired a potentially dangerous enemy at precisely the wrong time. The next morning found Kate in the simulation chamber, the Athena helmet enclosing her head like a second skin. Unlike traditional flight simulators, this one required no physical cockpit. The neural interface created a complete sensory experience, indistinguishable from reality. She soared through digital skies, pushing the virtual aurora to its limits. The aircraft responded not just to her physical inputs, but to her intentions. If she thought about banking left, the aurora began the maneuver almost before her hands moved the controls. The G-forces felt real, crushing pressure during tight turns, the sensation of her blood struggling against gravity. But the Athena system kept her consciousness clear, feeding oxygen-rich blood to her brain even as the rest of her body strained against forces that would normally induce blackout. Remarkable, Dr. Park's voice commented in her ear. You're adapting to the neural interface at twice the expected rate. Your brain is literally rewiring itself to work with the system. Kate executed a complex series of maneuvers, a vertical climb transitioning into a corkscrew roll, followed by an inverted dive. The Aurora performed flawlessly. Its responses so perfectly matched to her intentions that the line between pilot and aircraft began to blur. How does it feel? Park asked. Kate considered the question as she leveled out from the dive. Like thinking in 3 dimensions. Like the aircraft is part of me. That's exactly what we designed it to be, Park replied, satisfaction evident in his voice. The more you use the system, the more integrated it becomes with your neural pathways. After 2 hours in the simulator, Kate emerged physically exhausted but mentally exhilarated. The Athena helmet had indeed allowed her to push beyond normal human limitations, achieving maneuvers that would have been impossible in a conventional aircraft. The next 3 weeks followed a similar pattern. Mornings in the simulator, afternoons in physical training designed to prepare her body for the stresses of actual flight, evenings studying the Aurora's systems until she understood them at an instinctive level. The other pilots in the program progressed well, but none adapted to the neural interface as quickly as Kate. It was as if the Athena system had been designed specifically for her brain, or her brain had been waiting for exactly this technology. Rick Thornton was the only one who came close to matching her performance. His adaptation rate was nearly as impressive, his execution in the simulator almost as flawless. But there was a fundamental difference in their approaches. Where Kate flew with precision and efficiency, Rick flew with aggression and flair, taking unnecessary risks, pushing boundaries that didn't need to be pushed. Their rivalry intensified with each passing day, fueled by the competition inherent in their training and the underlying tension of their command relationship. The other pilots began to notice, dividing themselves into informal camps, supporting either Kate or Rick. It was during the 4th week of training that Kate first noticed something strange in the simulation. She was practicing evasive maneuvers against simulated enemy fighters when one of the AI opponents executed a tactic she'd never seen before. A complex feint followed by an attack from an impossible angle. She managed to evade it, but only barely. "Dr. Park," she called over the comlink, "was that part of the program?" There was a pause before his voice came back, puzzled. "What do you mean, Captain? That last attack pattern from Bogey 3? It wasn't standard." Another pause. "Let me check the logs." Kate continued the simulation, but now she was watching more carefully. There it was again. Another unexpected maneuver, this one even more sophisticated. When she emerged from the simulator, Dr. Park was waiting with a concerned expression. "You're right," he said without preamble. "Those attack patterns weren't in the original programming. The AI appears to be evolving its tactics based on your responses." "Isn't that what it's supposed to do?" Kate asked. "Learn and adapt?" "Yes, but not this quickly, and not in this specific way." Park removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "These new patterns bear similarities to classified combat maneuvers from the Chinese Air Force's J-20 program." Kate's brow furrowed. "That information isn't publicly available." "Exactly," Park replied grimly. which means either the AI has somehow inferred these tactics independently, extremely unlikely, or someone has modified the program, Kate finished for him. Park nodded, looking deeply troubled. I need to run a full diagnostic on the system. This could be a security breach. Should we inform General Bradley? Park hesitated. Not yet. It could be a coding error or an unintended consequence of the learning algorithms. Let me investigate first. Kate wasn't entirely comfortable with that decision, but she respected Park's expertise. All right? But if you find anything concrete, we go straight to the general. Agreed. Park turned to leave, then paused. Captain Harrison, until we understand what's happening, perhaps you should be cautious about what information you share with the Athena system. The implication was clear. If there was a security breach, the neural interface itself might be compromised. The thought was unsettling. Athena had access to her thoughts, at least those related to flying. What else might it be able to access? That evening, Kate was reviewing simulation data in her quarters when a knock came at her door. She opened it to find Colonel Davidson standing there, his expression serious. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "Not here." They walked in silence to the edge of the base, where the perimeter fence overlooked the vast Nevada desert. The sunset painted the sky in spectacular oranges and purples, the mountains dark silhouettes against the fading light. "What's going on, Bill?" Kate asked once they were alone. Davidson looked out over the desert, his weathered face somber in the dying light. "Do you remember what your father always said about coincidences?" Kate nodded. "Once is chance, twice is coincidence, 3 times is enemy action." "Exactly." Davidson turned to face her. 3 weeks before your father disappeared, he reported anomalies in his aircraft's systems. Unexpected behaviors that couldn't be explained by standard malfunctions. A chill ran down Kate's spine that had nothing to do with the desert evening. "And you think there's a connection to what's happening with the Aurora?" "I don't know," Davidson admitted, "but the similarities are troubling enough that I've been conducting my own investigation, off the books." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small data drive, pressing it into Kate's hand. "This contains everything I've found so far. It's not much, but it's enough to raise serious questions about the official report of your father's crash." Kate stared at the drive, her heart suddenly racing. "What are you saying?" Davidson's voice dropped even lower. "I'm saying there may be more to your father's disappearance than we were told. And whatever it was, I think it might be happening again." Before Kate could press for more details, Davidson's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression hardening. "General Bradley wants to see us now." They found the general in the secure briefing room, along with Dr. Park and, surprisingly, Rick Thornton. Bradley's face was grave as they entered. "Colonel, Captain, good. We have a situation." He nodded to Dr. Park. "Doctor, explain what you found." Park looked even more nervous than usual, his hands fidgeting with a tablet. "After Captain Harrison reported anomalies in the simulation, I performed a deep scan of the Athena system. I discovered a sophisticated backdoor in the AI's core programming." "A backdoor?" Kate asked. "You mean someone hacked it?" "Not exactly," Park clarified. "This code was integrated at the development stage. Someone with high-level access deliberately built this vulnerability into the system." Bradley's voice was tight with controlled anger. "In other words, we have a traitor." "What's the purpose of this backdoor?" Davidson asked. "It appears designed to allow remote override of the aircraft's primary systems," Park explained. "In theory, someone could take control of the Aurora in flight, without the pilot's knowledge or consent." The implications were chilling. The Aurora wasn't just an aircraft. With its weapon systems and stealth capabilities, it was potentially one of the most destructive weapons ever created. In the wrong hands. "Have you identified who's responsible?" Kate asked. Bradley shook his head. "Not yet, but we've narrowed it down to someone with level 7 clearance or above. That's only 15 people in the entire program." Kate glanced at Rick, wondering why he was present for this discussion. He met her gaze with an unreadable expression. "What happens now?" she asked, turning back to Bradley. "We proceed as planned," the general replied firmly. "If we change course, we alert the saboteur. Dr. Park has implemented a workaround that should prevent the backdoor from being exploited, at least temporarily. Meanwhile, we continue with the first actual flight test tomorrow." Kate blinked in surprise. "Tomorrow? I thought we had another week of simulator training." "Plans have changed. Intelligence suggests that Prometheus may be accelerating their own program. We need to get the Aurora operational as soon as possible." He turned to Kate. Captain Harrison, you'll pilot the first test flight. Major Thornton will monitor from the backup systems here. Rick's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he said nothing. Sir, Kate said carefully, given the security concerns, is it wise to proceed with a live flight? It's a calculated risk, Bradley acknowledged, but we've implemented additional safeguards and the test area has been secured. You'll be flying a circuit over the restricted airspace north of the base, well within range of our defensive systems. The meeting concluded with technical details about the flight plan and emergency protocols. As they were dismissed, Kate caught Rick watching her with an intensity that made her uneasy. There was something in his eyes, not just the usual rivalry, but something darker, more calculating. She approached him as they left the briefing room. Something on your mind, Major? Rick regarded her for a moment before responding. Just wondering if you're ready for this, Captain. First flight in an experimental aircraft with a compromised system. That's a lot of pressure. I can handle pressure. I'm sure you can, he replied smoothly. Just like your father, right? He was known for his cool head under pressure, too. The mention of her father in this context sent a wave of unease through Kate. What exactly are you implying, Thornton? Nothing at all. Rick's smile didn't reach his eyes. Just making conversation. Good luck tomorrow, Captain. You're going to need it. He walked away, leaving Kate with a growing sense of foreboding. Something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on exactly what. That night, sleep eluded her. She found herself standing at her window, staring out at the starlit desert, the data drive Davidson had given her clutched in her hand. She hadn't had time to review its contents yet, but its weight in her palm felt like a tangible connection to her father, to the truth about what had happened to him. What were you on to, Dad? She whispered to the night. What did you find that got you killed? The stars offered no answer, but as she turned away from the window, Kate made a decision. Whatever secrets lay buried in the Aurora project, whatever connection they might have to her father's disappearance, she would uncover them, not just for the sake of the mission, but for the truth she had been seeking for 10 long years. Dawn broke over Nellis Air Force Base with a brilliant orange glow that silhouetted the mountains to the east. Kate arrived at the hangar 2 hours early, wanting time alone with the aircraft before the formal pre-flight procedures began. The Aurora waited in the dim light of the hangar, its sleek form seeming to absorb the shadows around it. Kate walked a slow circuit around the aircraft, running her gloved hand along its surface, feeling the almost imperceptible seams where the advanced composite materials joined. This wasn't just another plane. This was the culmination of decades of aerospace engineering, the physical embodiment of humanity's quest to conquer the sky. And today, she would be the first to take it beyond the digital realm of simulation into actual flight. The pre-flight briefing was tense, but thorough. Dr. Park personally checked the Athena helmet, explaining the additional security measures he'd implemented overnight. I've isolated the primary neural pathways from the potentially compromised sections, he told her quietly. The back door should remain dormant, but if anything feels wrong, anything at all, abort the flight immediately. Kate nodded, appreciating his concern. In the background, she could see Rick supervising the final systems check with meticulous attention to detail. Whatever their personal differences, she had to acknowledge his professionalism when it came to flight operations. As she prepared to board the aircraft, Colonel Davidson approached, his expression a mixture of pride and concern. Your father would give anything to be here today, he said softly. To see you make history. Kate smiled, touched by the sentiment. I'll fly it the way he taught me, clean and by the book. Davidson squeezed her shoulder. Just come back safe. That's an order, Captain. The boarding process was unlike anything Kate had experienced before. The Aurora's cockpit was more integrated than conventional aircraft, with fewer physical controls and more neural interface connections. Once seated, technicians attached the Athena helmet, connecting it to the aircraft's systems. The moment the neural link activated, Kate gasped involuntarily. The sensation was far more intense than in the simulator. It was as if her consciousness had expanded to encompass the entire aircraft. She could feel the Aurora as an extension of her own body, the power in its engines like blood in her veins, its sensors extending her awareness in all directions. Neural interface active and stable, Dr. Park's voice reported through the comm. How do you feel, Captain? Kate took a moment to adjust to the overwhelming sensory input before responding. It's incredible. Much stronger than the simulator. That's to be expected. The actual hardware creates a more direct connection than the simulation could replicate. The pre-flight checks continued, each system reporting optimal functionality. Kate found she could monitor them almost instinctively through the neural interface, with status information appearing as intuitive sensations, rather than as displays to be read. "Phoenix 1, you are cleared for engine start," came the controller's voice. Kate acknowledged, then initiated the startup sequence. The Aurora's advanced propulsion system came to life with a deep, resonant hum, rather than the roar of conventional jets. The vibrations traveled through the airframe and into her body, through the neural interface, creating a sensation like music felt rather than heard. As the massive hangar doors slid open, revealing the runway beyond, Kate felt a surge of anticipation that was partly her own and partly generated by the aircraft itself, as if the Aurora was eager to take to the skies for which it had been designed. "Phoenix 1, cleared to taxi," the controller instructed. The Aurora moved with extraordinary responsiveness, the slightest thought translating into smooth motion across the tarmac. Kate guided it to the runway threshold, where she paused for final clearance. "Phoenix 1, you are cleared for takeoff. Winds light and variable. Good hunting." Kate took a deep breath, then eased the throttle forward. The Aurora accelerated with breathtaking speed, pressing her back into the seat as the runway streaked past. At precisely the calculated moment, she pulled back on the stick, and the aircraft leaped into the air with an eagerness that seemed almost alive. The climb rate was astonishing, twice what she'd experienced in any other aircraft. Within moments, the base had dwindled below her, and the vast expanse of the Nevada desert spread out in all directions, bathed in the golden light of morning. "Phoenix 1 is airborne," she reported, "all systems nominal." She banked the Aurora into its assigned flight path, a circuit that would take her over the restricted testing range while gradually increasing altitude and speed. Through the neural interface, she could feel the aircraft's systems operating in perfect harmony, each component functioning at peak efficiency. The freedom was intoxicating. Kate executed a series of maneuvers to test the Aurora's handling characteristics, finding it even more responsive than the simulator had suggested. The aircraft seemed to anticipate her intentions, beginning each maneuver a fraction of a second before her conscious commands. "This is amazing," she breathed, executing a perfect Immelman turn at speeds that would have torn a conventional aircraft apart. The G-forces mounted, but the Athena system kept her consciousness clear, her vision sharp even as her body strained against forces that should have induced immediate blackout. "Your neural patterns are optimal," Dr. Park reported. "The interface is performing better than our most optimistic projections." Kate climbed higher, the sky darkening around her as she approached the edge of the stratosphere. At 80,000 feet, the curvature of the Earth was clearly visible, the horizon a distinct curve against the blackness of space. Few pilots had ever seen this view firsthand. "Beginning high-altitude performance evaluation," she reported, guiding the Aurora through a series of specific test parameters. It was during a maximum performance turn at 85,000 feet that Kate first noticed something odd, a brief flicker in the neural interface, like static on a radio, but felt rather than heard. She paused, waiting to see if it would recur. There it was again, a momentary disruption in the seamless connection between her mind and the aircraft. "Dr. Park," she called, "I'm experiencing some interference in the neural interface. Intermittent, but increasing in frequency." There was a pause before his response came. "We're not seeing anything unusual in the telemetry. Can you describe the sensation?" Before Kate could answer, the disruption came again, stronger this time, lasting several seconds. She felt a momentary disconnection from the aircraft's systems, as if someone had briefly severed the neural link. "It's getting worse," she reported, a note of concern entering her voice. "Recommend aborting the test flight and returning to base." "Concur," came General Bradley's voice. "Phoenix 1, you are cleared for immediate return. Maintain current altitude and heading until clear of the mountains, then begin descent." Kate acknowledged the order and banked the Aurora toward Nellis. But as she did so, the disruption in the neural interface intensified dramatically. Suddenly, she felt the aircraft's controls become unresponsive to her commands. "Mayday, mayday!" she called out. "I've lost primary control, the back door is active." Through the neural interface, she could feel something else entering the system. A foreign presence overriding her commands, seizing control of the Aurora's flight systems. The aircraft banked sharply away from its return course, accelerating to speeds well beyond the test parameters. Phoenix 1, what's your status? Bradley's voice crackled with urgency. Something's taking control, Kate replied, fighting to regain command of the aircraft. The Aurora is not responding to my inputs. She could feel the foreign presence through the neural interface. Cold, methodical, inhuman. The AI was being controlled remotely, executing a predetermined flight plan that was taking her farther from the base with each passing second. Dr. Park's voice came next, rapid and desperate. Captain Harrison, initiate emergency protocol Sierra 9. Repeat, Sierra 9. Sierra 9, the complete shutdown and restart of the neural interface. It would temporarily sever her connection to the aircraft's systems, potentially allowing her to reset the interface before the intrusion could reestablish itself. Kate executed the command sequence, bracing herself for the disorientation that would follow. For 3 terrifying seconds, she was flying blind as the Athena system rebooted. When the connection reestablished, she immediately seized control of the aircraft, wrenching it back toward Nellis. I have control, she reported, relief evident in her voice, returning to base. But her relief was short-lived. Through the restored neural interface, she detected multiple warning signals. The Aurora's engines were overriding her commands, pushing to maximum power. The aircraft began to climb sharply, accelerating beyond safe parameters. They're still in the system, she called out. I can't shut down the engines. The G-forces mounted as the Aurora entered a steep climb, pushing Kate to the limits of what even the Athena system could compensate for. Through gritted teeth, she fought to maintain consciousness as the altimeter spun wildly. 100,000 feet, 110,000 in, 120,000. At such extreme altitude, the air was too thin for conventional engines, but the Aurora's advanced propulsion system continued to function, driving the aircraft to the very edge of space. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the climb stopped. The aircraft leveled out at approximately 130,000 feet, higher than any piloted aircraft had ever flown. For a moment, Kate hung there in eerie silence, the earth curving dramatically below her, the sky above fading to the black of space. Phoenix 1, came Bradley's voice, distorted by the extreme distance. Your transponder shows you at an impossible altitude. Confirm position. I'm at the edge of space, Kate replied, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. Something wanted the Aurora up here, beyond the range of conventional intercept. As if in response to her words, the neural interface flickered again, and she felt the aircraft begin a power dive toward Earth. The nose pitched down sharply, and the Aurora began accelerating with terrifying speed. The G-forces reversed, blood rushing to her head as the negative Gs tried to force her from her seat. The Athena system struggled to compensate, but the forces were beyond what it had been designed to handle. Mayday! Mayday! Kate called out as the Earth rushed toward her. The Aurora is in an uncontrolled dive. Projected impact got in the Sierra Nevada range. The mountains were coming up fast, too fast. At this speed, impact would vaporize the aircraft and everything in it. Kate fought desperately against the controls, trying to break the AI's hold on the flight systems. Through the neural interface, she could feel the aircraft's resistance to her commands, like trying to bend steel with her bare hands. But Catherine Harrison wasn't just any pilot. She was her father's daughter, with the same unbreakable will, the same refusal to accept defeat. Drawing on every ounce of her training and natural ability, Kate focused her mind with laser intensity on a single command: level out. For an agonizing moment, nothing happened. The mountains continued to rush toward her at supersonic speed. Then, almost imperceptibly at first, the Aurora's nose began to rise. Inch by inch, fighting the AI's control, Kate forced the aircraft to pull out of its death dive. The G-forces were beyond anything she'd ever experienced. 12 Gs, 13, 14, crushing her into the seat with weight that threatened to collapse her very bones. The Athena system was operating beyond its design limits, fighting to keep blood flowing to her brain as darkness crept in at the edges of her vision. With one final supreme effort, Kate wrenched the Aurora level, just a few thousand feet above the jagged peaks. The strain was too much. The neural interface overloaded, sending a shock of pain through her skull before shutting down completely. Without the interface, the Aurora reverted to conventional controls. Kate grabbed the stick, pulling back with all her strength to gain altitude. The aircraft responded sluggishly, damaged by the extreme stresses it had endured. "Phoenix 1 to control," she called, her voice ragged with exhaustion. "I've regained partial control, but the Aurora is damaged. Neural interface is offline. Request emergency landing vectors." There was no response, only static. She was too far from base, her communications equipment likely damaged in the struggle. Kate quickly assessed her situation. The Aurora was limping along, one engine fluctuating dangerously, its stealth skin compromised in several areas. She was over remote terrain, low on fuel, with no communications and limited conventional flight controls. And someone had just tried very deliberately to kill her. She set a course by dead reckoning, aiming for what she hoped was Nellis Air Force Base, pushing the damaged aircraft as fast as it would go. But without the neural interface to manage the engines, the Aurora's performance was severely compromised. 10 minutes into her return flight, the port engine failed completely. The aircraft lurched violently, alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. Kate fought to maintain control, compensating for the asymmetric thrust. But it was a losing battle. The second engine began to falter, coughing and sputtering as fuel pressure dropped. The controls grew heavier in her hands as the hydraulic systems lost pressure. Kate's eyes scanned the terrain below, looking for anywhere flat enough to attempt an emergency landing. The desert floor was approaching rapidly as the Aurora lost altitude, its graceful lines now broken by damaged panels torn loose in the extreme maneuvers. A dry lake bed appeared ahead. Not ideal, but her only option. Kate aimed for it, calculating approach angles and touchdown speeds with the precision that had made her legendary among her peers. The Aurora hit hard, its landing gear collapsing on impact. The aircraft skidded across the lake bed in a shower of sparks and debris, spinning half around before finally coming to rest in a cloud of dust and smoke. For a long moment, Kate sat motionless in the cockpit, her body screaming with pain from the impact and the G-forces she'd endured. Then, with hands that trembled from exhaustion, she began the shutdown procedure and emergency egress. The canopy refused to open, jammed from the impact. Kate reached for the emergency release handle, yanking it with the last of her strength. The explosive bolts fired, blowing the canopy clear of the aircraft. The Nevada heat hit her like a physical blow as she climbed out of the cockpit, nearly falling as her legs gave way beneath her. Blood trickled down the side of her face from where the Athena helmet had cut into her scalp during the crash. Kate staggered away from the smoking wreckage, looking back at the once beautiful aircraft now reduced to a broken hulk. Only then did the full magnitude of what had happened begin to sink in. Someone had taken control of the most advanced aircraft ever built and tried to use it, and her, to destroy them both. This wasn't just sabotage, it was attempted murder. And whoever was responsible was still out there. Kate reached for her emergency locator, only to find it damaged beyond use. She was stranded in the desert, injured, with no way to communicate and no idea how far she was from the nearest civilization. As she surveyed the desolate landscape around her, a glint of reflected sunlight caught her eye. Movement on a distant ridge. Someone was watching. Kate dropped instinctively into a defensive crouch, scanning the horizon. There it was again, the unmistakable silhouette of human figures against the skyline. At least 3 of them, moving with the disciplined precision of military training. They weren't the rescue team from Nellis. It was too soon, and they were approaching from the wrong direction. These were someone else, someone who had been waiting for her. Kate's hand went to her sidearm, only to find the holster empty, the pistol lost in the chaos of the crash. She was unarmed, injured, and facing unknown hostiles who had almost certainly orchestrated the Aurora's hijacking. With no other options, she turned to the only sanctuary available, the crashed aircraft itself. If she could reach the emergency kit in the survival compartment, she might have a chance. Kate sprinted back to the Aurora, ignoring the pain that lanced through her ribs with each step. She reached the aircraft just as the first shots rang out. High-powered rifles, their reports echoing across the desert. Bullets pinged off the Aurora's frame as Kate dove into the open cockpit, reaching behind the seat for the survival kit. Her fingers closed around the handle, pulling it free just as a bullet shattered what remained of the instrument panel inches from her face. The kit contained basic first aid supplies, a survival knife, emergency rations, a water purification system, and, thank God, a backup sidearm. Kate checked the pistol, fully loaded, standard Air Force issue. Another volley of rifle fire convinced her that remaining with the aircraft was suicide. She needed to move, to find cover, to survive long enough for a rescue team to find her. With the survival kit strapped to her back and the pistol in her hand, Kate took a deep breath. Then she burst from the cockpit, running in a zigzag pattern toward a cluster of boulders 50 yards away. Bullets kicked up dust at her feet as she ran, the shooters adjusting their aim to track her movement. She reached the boulders and dove behind them, gasping for breath as pain radiated through her injured body. The shooting stopped, replaced by the sound of voices shouting commands. They were advancing, coordinating their approach to flank her position. Kate checked her surroundings, looking for an escape route. The boulder field extended toward a ravine that might offer better cover, but reaching it would expose her to fire from at least 2 angles. She had 8 rounds in the pistol against unknown numbers of well-armed opponents. The odds were not in her favor. As the footsteps grew closer, Kate made her decision. She wasn't going to die hiding behind a rock. She was a Harrison, and Harrisons went down fighting. With the pistol gripped firmly in both hands, she prepared to make her move. But before she could act, a new sound cut through the desert air, the distinctive whine of jet engines approaching at high speed. Kate looked up to see 2 F-35s screaming overhead, so low that their weight kicked up a storm of dust across the lakebed. Banking hard, they came around for another pass, this time dropping flares in a clear warning to the attackers. The effect was immediate. The shooting stopped, replaced by the sound of vehicles starting up, the hostiles making a rapid withdrawal. Kate remained in cover, wary of a trap, until the distinctive thump, thump, thump of helicopter rotors announced the arrival of a rescue team. A Black Hawk appeared over the ridge, settling onto the lakebed in a cloud of dust. Armed Air Force security personnel spilled out, securing the perimeter as medical teams followed. Kate emerged from cover, nearly collapsing as the adrenaline that had kept her going finally ebbed. "Captain Harrison!" called a medic, rushing to her side. "Are you all right? Can you walk?" Kate nodded weakly, allowing herself to be helped toward the helicopter. As they approached, she saw Colonel Davidson jump down from the aircraft, his face a mask of concern. "Kate!" he called out, reaching her in a few long strides. "Thank God you're alive. We thought we'd lost you." "They tried," Kate replied, her voice hoarse. "They hacked the Aurora, took control, tried to crash it into the mountains." Davidson's expression darkened. "We know. We picked up the override signal but couldn't block it. By the time we traced it—" "Traced it where?" Kate interrupted, suddenly alert despite her exhaustion. "Did you find the source?" Davidson hesitated, glancing at the medical team before responding in a lower voice. "The signal originated from inside Nellis, someone on the base." The implications hit Kate like a physical blow. The enemy wasn't just out there in the desert. They were inside the wire, among those she worked with every day. "Rick," she whispered, the suspicion that had been building in her mind finally crystallizing. Davidson's expression confirmed her fear. "He disappeared right after your Mayday call. Security footage shows him accessing the Athena control systems moments before you lost control of the aircraft." "He's working for Prometheus," Kate said, the pieces falling into place. "The private military corporation Bradley mentioned." "We think so, but we don't know who else might be involved." Davidson helped her into the helicopter, continuing once they were seated. "This goes deeper than we realized, Kate. Much deeper." As the Black Hawk lifted off, Kate looked back at the wreckage of the Aurora, the most advanced aircraft ever built, now a smoking ruin in the desert. Whatever secrets it had contained about her father, about the conspiracy that had claimed his life and nearly taken hers, were now beyond her reach. But not beyond her determination. "We're going to find them," she said, her voice hardening with resolve. "Whoever they are, whatever it takes. We're going to find them, and we're going to make them pay." The helicopter banked toward Nellis, leaving the crash site behind. But as they flew, Kate couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning, that the forces that had been set in motion would not stop until either she or they were destroyed. And Catherine Harrison had no intention of being destroyed. The first thing Kate felt was pain, not the dull ache of fatigue or the sharp sting of a superficial wound, but the deep, pervasive agony of a body pushed far beyond its natural limits. Every heartbeat pulsed discomfort through her battered frame as the Black Hawk's rotors thundered overhead, carrying her back to Nellis Air Force Base. She tried to focus on Colonel Davidson's face, but her vision kept blurring around the edges. The medical officer beside her pressed an oxygen mask against her face, his lips moving with words she couldn't quite make out over the helicopter's roar. Severe G-force trauma, she finally heard him say to Davidson. Possible cerebral microhemorrhaging. We need to get her to medical immediately. Kate pushed the mask away. No, she managed, her voice barely audible. We need to find Rick. He could still be at the base. We've got the entire security team looking for him, Davidson assured her, gently replacing the oxygen mask. Right now you need medical attention. You pulled forces that would have killed most pilots. She wanted to argue, but the darkness at the edges of her vision was expanding, her consciousness retreating like the tide. The last thing she saw before blackness claimed her was Davidson's weathered face, creased with concern and something else, something that looked almost like guilt. Kate awakened to the steady beep of medical monitors and the sterile white ceiling of the base hospital. For a moment, disorientation gripped her. Then memory flooded back. The aurora, the hijacked neural interface, the crash, the attackers in the desert. She tried to sit up but found her body uncooperative, responding with searing pain that forced her back down against the pillow. Easy, Captain. A doctor appeared at her bedside. A middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen it all. You've been through quite an ordeal. How long? Kate asked, her throat raw. 36 hours, he replied, checking the monitors. You've been sedated while we assess the damage. The good news is that you're alive, which is frankly miraculous given what you endured. The bad news is you've suffered extensive soft tissue trauma, 3 cracked ribs, a moderate concussion, and what we're calling neural interface rejection syndrome. What's that? We're not entirely sure, the doctor admitted. It appears the Athena system created pathways in your brain that were damaged when the system overloaded. You're experiencing something similar to withdrawal combined with neural inflammation. He adjusted her IV drip. The syndrome is theoretical. You're our first actual case. Congratulations to me, Kate murmured. Where's Colonel Davidson? He's been notified that you're awake. He'll be here shortly. The doctor hesitated. Captain Harrison, I need you to understand that your recovery will take time. Your body sustained G-forces well beyond human tolerance. Without the Athena system's compensation, you would have died instantly. Kate closed her eyes, remembering the crushing weight as she pulled the Aurora out of its death dive. 14 Gs, nearly twice what the human body was designed to withstand, even with a G-suit. Have they found Rick? She asked. The doctor's expression turned guarded. I'm not cleared to discuss operational matters. Colonel Davidson will brief you. Before Kate could press further, the door opened and Davidson entered. He looked older than he had 2 days ago, new lines carved into his face by stress and lack of sleep. Behind him came General Bradley, his uniform immaculate, but his eyes hard as granite. The doctor excused himself, leaving the 3 of them alone. How are you feeling, Captain? Bradley asked, his tone professional but warm. Like I've been hit by a truck, sir, Kate replied honestly. But I'll live. Have you found Major Thornton? Bradley and Davidson exchanged a glance before Bradley responded. No, he disappeared shortly after your Mayday call. We tracked his vehicle to McCarran International Airport, where he boarded a private jet under a false identity. The aircraft filed a flight plan for Singapore but diverted once it entered international airspace. We've lost him. He was working for Prometheus all along, Kate said, the betrayal still fresh and bitter. Yes, Bradley confirmed grimly. And he wasn't alone. We've identified 3 other Prometheus moles within the Aurora program, including one of Dr. Park's senior engineers. They've also vanished. Kate absorbed this, her mind piecing together the implications, despite the fog of painkillers. So they have the Athena system's architecture. Unfortunately, yes, and portions of the Aurora's design specifications. Bradley's jaw tightened. What they don't have is a working prototype or, more importantly, a pilot capable of operating it. That's why they tried to kill you, Captain. They couldn't risk leaving someone alive who understood both the technology and the potential sabotage vectors. Kate turned to Davidson. What about the data drive you gave me? The information about my father? Davidson straightened slightly, glancing at Bradley, who nodded permission to speak. I've been investigating your father's crash for years, Davidson began. There were always inconsistencies in the official report. Mechanical failures that didn't make sense, radio communications that were never properly logged. 3 weeks before his disappearance, your father reported anomalies in his F-15's flight systems, unexplained behaviors similar to what you experienced with the Aurora. You think Prometheus was behind that too? Kate asked. Not Prometheus specifically, they didn't exist then. But we believe your father stumbled onto the early stages of what would eventually become their AI drone program. Someone embedded within military aerospace development has been siphoning classified technology for at least a decade. The data drive contains everything I've uncovered, Davidson continued, including communications suggesting your father may have been deliberately targeted because he noticed the discrepancies. Kate closed her eyes, absorbing the implications. Her father's death had never felt like an accident to her, but having her suspicions confirmed brought no satisfaction, only a cold, hard certainty. So what happens now? She asked, opening her eyes again. Now, General Bradley said, we rebuild. The Aurora prototype is lost, but the program continues. The strategic importance is too great to abandon, especially with Prometheus developing their own version. And me? You rest, you recover, and then, if medical clears you, you return to the program. Bradley studied her with careful consideration. You're still our most qualified pilot, Captain Harrison. Your ability to withstand the neural interface in extreme G-forces is unmatched. We need you. After they left, Kate lay in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling as darkness gathered outside her window. Their words echoed in her mind, but beneath them lay a current of unease. There had been something in Bradley's manner, some subtle reservation that nagged at her intuition. Sleep refused to come. When the night nurse checked on her at midnight, Kate requested her personal effects. After some hesitation, the nurse brought the small box containing the items that had been with her when she was admitted. Among them was the data drive Davidson had given her. Kate waited until the ward grew quiet before slipping from her bed, fighting through waves of dizziness and nausea. She made her way to the nurse's station, finding it momentarily empty. The computer terminal there required a password, but Kate had spent enough time around military systems to try the default emergency medical override codes. The third attempt granted access. Her fingers trembled as she inserted the drive, opening the files Davidson had collected. Most were what she expected: flight logs, maintenance reports, witness statements about her father's crash. But in a subfolder labeled simply Blackbird, she found something unexpected: surveillance photos of her father, taken in Baghdad, 3 months after his supposed death. The timestamp couldn't be right. Robert Harrison had died when his F-15 crashed in the northern Iraqi desert. She had attended his funeral, watched the flag being folded over his empty coffin. Yet here he was, clearly alive, being escorted by men in civilian clothing into a nondescript building. Kate dug deeper into the folder, finding fragments of intercepted communications, redacted documents with just enough text visible to form a disturbing picture. Her father hadn't died in that crash. He had been extracted. Whether as a willing defector or an unwilling captive, the evidence didn't clarify. The final document was a surveillance report dated just 1 year ago. The photo showed a man who resembled Robert Harrison, but aged, thinner, his posture stooped. He was entering a research facility in Dubai, accompanied by security personnel with military bearing. The facility belonged to a subsidiary of Helios International, a defense contractor that, according to Davidson's notes, was a suspected front for Prometheus. Kate stared at the image until her vision blurred with unshed tears. Her father might still be alive, possibly a captive, possibly a collaborator, but alive. She was so absorbed that she almost missed the sound of footsteps approaching down the corridor. Hastily, she ejected the drive and cleared the browser history, slipping back to her room just as the night nurse returned. Sleep remained elusive, but now for an entirely different reason. Her mind raced with implications and possibilities. If her father was alive and working for Prometheus, was it by choice or coercion? Could he be the source of the technology behind their drone program? And if he was a prisoner, could he be rescued? By morning, Kate had made a decision. She needed to recover, not just to rejoin the Aurora program, but to find her father and uncover the truth about Prometheus. And to do that, she would need to keep her discoveries to herself, at least until she knew who she could truly trust. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of medical tests, physical therapy, and debriefings. Kate described the Aurora's flight, and subsequent hijacking in painstaking detail, careful to mention nothing about the surveillance photos of her father. She sensed she was being evaluated not just physically, but psychologically, assessed for trauma, instability, or signs that the neural interface had affected her mind. Dr. Stephen Park visited her on the 10th day, looking haggard and guilt-ridden. "I should have detected the back door sooner," he said, sitting beside her bed. "It was my responsibility to ensure the system's integrity." "It wasn't your fault," Kate assured him, studying the scientist's face. She had come to trust Park during their training, but now she found herself analyzing everyone, searching for signs of deception or divided loyalties. The code was hidden by experts who had access to the system from its inception. Park nodded wearily. "We're rebuilding the Athena interface from scratch. Complete code review, new security protocols, hardware-level encryption. But it will take months. And in the meantime, Prometheus gets further ahead." "Yes." Park hesitated. "There's something else you should know. The neural changes from your interface with Athena, they're permanent, more extensive than we anticipated." Kate felt a chill. "Meaning what exactly?" "Your brain has physically rewired itself to accommodate the interface. New neural pathways, altered synaptic connections. It's as if your mind evolved to become partly technological." He looked at her with a mixture of scientific fascination and human concern. "We don't fully understand the implications yet, but it means you'll likely experience the world differently than before." "I already do," Kate admitted quietly. Since waking in the hospital, she had noticed changes in her perception. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds more distinct. She could process information faster, visualize three-dimensional spaces with perfect clarity. "Is it dangerous?" "We don't think so. Your brain appears stable, just enhanced." Park's expression turned thoughtful. "In many ways, you've become what the Athena system was designed to create. A human capable of processing information at near computer speeds while retaining human intuition and creativity." After Park left, Kate tested herself, mentally calculating complex flight equations, visualizing aerodynamic forces with a precision that would have been impossible before. Her mind felt sharper, clearer, despite the lingering headaches from her injuries. She was changing, evolving into something beyond a conventional pilot, and that evolution might be the key to finding her father and stopping Prometheus. On the 17th day, she was cleared to leave the hospital, though not to return to flight status. Colonel Davidson came to escort her back to her quarters, his weathered face showing relief at her recovery. "The doctors say you have made remarkable progress," he commented, as they walked slowly across the base, the Nevada sun warm on their faces. "They're calling it a miracle." "Not a miracle," Kate replied, "just good genes and stubbornness." Davidson smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something was troubling him, something beyond the Aurora's loss and Rick's betrayal. Kate waited, letting the silence stretch between them until he finally spoke. "General Bradley wants to see you tomorrow morning. There's been a development with the Aurora program." "What kind of development?" Davidson shook his head. "Not for me to say. But Kate..." He stopped, turning to face her directly. "Whatever happens, remember who you can trust." The warning was clear, if cryptic. When they reached her quarters, Davidson handed her a small package. "Your personal effects from the crash site. Security cleared them." Kate waited until she was alone before opening the package. It contained her flight suit, damaged but salvageable, her dog tags, and a sealed envelope. Inside the envelope was a handwritten note in Davidson's distinctive scrawl. "Trust no one. Office bugged. Meet tonight. 2200 Old Hangar B." Kate burned the note in her bathroom sink, watching the paper curl and blacken. Davidson had risked his career to warn her. Something significant was happening, something he couldn't discuss openly. That night, she slipped out of her quarters after curfew, using the shadows and her knowledge of the base's surveillance blind spots to make her way to the abandoned hangar. It stood at the edge of the airfield, a relic from the 1960s that had been deemed too costly to demolish but too outdated to use. Davidson was waiting inside, a single flashlight illuminating his grave expression. "Sorry for the cloak and dagger," he said quietly, "but we have a serious problem." "What kind of problem?" Kate asked, keeping her voice low. "I've been cut out of the Aurora program," Reassigned to Langley, effective tomorrow morning. His eyes held a mixture of anger and concern. They're bringing in a new team, people with ties to private defense contractors. I don't trust them. Why would Bradley replace you? You've been with the program from the start. Because I've been asking too many questions about the connection between the Aurora project and your father's crash. Davidson's voice hardened. There's something bigger happening here, Kate. Something that goes beyond Prometheus and stolen technology. What do you mean? I think elements within our own military-industrial complex are playing both sides, developing the Aurora for the Air Force, while simultaneously feeding technology to Prometheus through shell companies and cutouts. Kate felt a cold weight settling in her stomach. For what purpose? The oldest motive in the world, profit. Imagine controlling both sides of the next arms race, selling advanced drones to the US military while simultaneously selling countermeasures to potential adversaries through proxies. Davidson's expression was grim in the dim light. And anyone who gets too close to the truth becomes expendable. Like my father, Kate said softly. And potentially like you. Davidson pulled a small object from his pocket. A civilian smartphone, not military issue. I've loaded this with everything I've uncovered, including some files I didn't put on the original drive. It's encrypted. The password is your mother's maiden name followed by your childhood dog's name. Kate took the phone, slipping it into her pocket. So what do I do now? Play along. Return to the program when they clear you. Gain their trust. But watch and listen. Davidson checked his watch. I have a contact outside the military, Frank Murphy, former test pilot from the 1980s. He lives off the grid, but he knows things about the early days of these programs. If you need help and can't reach me, find him. He wrote an address on a scrap of paper and handed it to her. Memorize this, then destroy it. I don't like this, Bill, Kate said, using his first name as she rarely did. You're talking about conspiracy within the highest levels of military command. I know how it sounds, Davidson admitted, but your father saw it too. That's why they targeted him. He gripped her shoulder. Be careful, Kate. These people have killed to protect their secret. They won't hesitate to do it again. The next morning, Kate reported to General Bradley's office as instructed. She found him accompanied by a civilian she didn't recognize, a tall, immaculately dressed man in his 50s with steel gray hair and cold blue eyes. Captain Harrison, this is Mr. Charles Westfield, CEO of Quantum Aerospace. Bradley introduced them. He'll be overseeing the next phase of the Aurora program. Westfield offered his hand, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Captain Harrison, it's a pleasure. Your reputation precedes you. Kate shook his hand, noting the calculated firmness of his grip. I wasn't aware the Aurora program was being privatized, sir. Not privatized, Bradley corrected quickly. Quantum Aerospace is partnering with us to accelerate development after the recent setbacks. We bring certain proprietary technologies to the table, Westfield added smoothly, particularly in the field of neural interfaces. I understand you experienced some difficulties with the Athena system. There was something in his tone that set Kate's instincts on alert. The system performed admirably until it was compromised, she replied carefully. Dr. Park's design was sound. Dr. Park is a brilliant theorist, Westfield acknowledged, but practical application requires a different approach. My team has developed a next-generation interface we call Prometheus. Kate couldn't hide her reaction to the name. Prometheus? Like the terrorist organization? Westfield's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. The name comes from Greek mythology, the Titan who gave fire to humanity. We're bringing a similar gift, technology that will revolutionize aerial combat. Captain Harrison will be our primary test pilot once she's medically cleared, Bradley interjected. Her unique neural adaptations make her ideally suited for the new interface. Absolutely, Westfield agreed. In fact, we'd like to begin preliminary neural mapping tomorrow, if you're feeling up to it, Captain. Kate maintained a neutral expression, even as alarm bells rang in her mind. The name couldn't be coincidence. Either Westfield was being incredibly brazen, or he had no idea that the military had identified Prometheus as a threat. Or, most disturbing of all, the connection between Quantum Aerospace and Prometheus was known and sanctioned at levels above Bradley's pay grade. I'm at your disposal, sir, she replied, meeting Westfield's calculating gaze directly. Over the next 3 days, Kate underwent extensive testing with Westfield's team of neurologists and engineers. They mapped her brain activity, conducted simulations, and subjected her to a battery of cognitive tests. Throughout, she maintained a facade of cooperative professionalism while carefully noting everything she observed. Westfield's Prometheus interface was fundamentally similar to Athena, but more invasive, designed to create a deeper integration between human consciousness and machine intelligence. The specifications she glimpsed suggested capabilities far beyond what Park had developed, including the ability to record and potentially influence the pilot's thought patterns. It wasn't just a control system, it was potentially a means of control. On the fourth day, Kate was introduced to the new Aurora prototype, designated XFA-44B. Like its predecessor, it represented the cutting edge of aerospace engineering, but with subtle differences that suggested enhanced weapons capabilities and a more aggressive design philosophy. "We've corrected the vulnerabilities that led to the previous incident," Westfield explained as they toured the hangar where the aircraft was under construction. "The neural interface is now isolated from external networks with quadruple redundant security protocols." "And when will flight testing begin?" Kate asked. 2 weeks, Westfield replied, "once your medical team gives final clearance." That evening, alone in her quarters, Kate encrypted a message to the contact address Davidson had provided, detailing her discoveries about quantum aerospace and the Prometheus interface. She couldn't be certain the message would reach him at Langley, or if Davidson was even still alive, but she had to try. As she prepared for bed, a wave of dizziness struck her, more intense than the lingering effects of her injuries should have caused. Her vision swam, and for a moment, she experienced a strange double perception, as if she were simultaneously seeing her quarters and somewhere else, a dimly lit laboratory where figures moved around technical equipment. The episode passed as quickly as it had come, leaving her shaken and uncertain. Was it a side effect of the neural changes Park had described, or something more sinister? Had Westfield's tests activated something in her brain, some remnant of the Athena interface? Kate slept fitfully, her dreams filled with fractured images, her father in a sterile laboratory, the Aurora spiraling out of control, Rick Thornton standing over her with a cold smile. She woke at dawn, drenched in sweat, but with a clear conviction. She needed to find Frank Murphy, the former test pilot Davidson had mentioned. If anyone could help her understand what was happening, it would be someone who had seen the earliest versions of these programs. The challenge would be leaving the base. Since her crash, security had been tightened, and as the Aurora's pilot, she was considered both an asset and a potential flight risk. Her movements were monitored, her communications potentially under surveillance. An opportunity presented itself that afternoon when Dr. Helen Carter, one of the base physicians, mentioned that Kate needed to undergo specialized brain imaging at Desert Springs Medical Center in Las Vegas. "These tests can't be done with our equipment," Carter explained. "I've scheduled you for tomorrow morning." Kate recognized the chance immediately. "Will I be transported by military escort?" "No need," Carter replied. "It's a civilian facility, and we want to keep the Aurora program off their radar. You'll take an unmarked car with a single security detail. 2 hours there, 2 hours for the procedure, 2 hours back." That night, Kate prepared carefully. She packed essentials in a small bag she could easily carry: civilian clothes, the smartphone Davidson had given her, some energy bars, and the cash she kept for emergencies. The security detail would be armed, which presented a problem, but she would have to improvise. The next morning, she met her escort in the parking area, a young sergeant named Miller, who seemed more bored than vigilant. They took an unmarked sedan, heading east toward Las Vegas under the bright Nevada sun. 20 minutes into the journey, Kate made her move. "Sergeant, I'm not feeling well," she said, feigning nausea. "Can we pull over for a moment?" Miller glanced at her with concern. "Are you okay, Captain?" "Just some motion sickness, side effect of the medications." He pulled the car onto the shoulder of the empty desert highway. Kate stumbled out, moving to the rear of the vehicle as if to get some air. When Miller followed to check on her, she struck, a precise blow to the base of his skull, not enough to cause serious injury, but sufficient to stun him momentarily. Before he could recover, she had his sidearm and was pressing it against his ribs. "I'm sorry about this, Sergeant," she said calmly. "I need you to understand that I'm not trying to desert or betray my country. There's something happening at Nellis that I need to investigate, and I can't do it from inside. Miller's eyes widened with understanding and fear. Captain Harrison, please don't do this. Whatever you think is happening isn't what they're telling you, she finished for him. I know. Right now I need your phone, your weapon, and your handcuffs. I'll leave you with water and in the shade. Someone will find you within a couple of hours. Reluctantly, Miller complied. Kate secured him to the car's door handle with his own handcuffs, positioning him in the shade of the vehicle. She placed a water bottle within his reach. For what it's worth, I believe you're a good soldier, she told him. But right now, I'm not certain who the real enemy is. Taking the car keys, she left Miller and drove west, away from Las Vegas, following the directions Davidson had given her. Frank Murphy's property was in a remote area of the desert, accessible only by a dirt road that branched off from a seldom-used highway. 2 hours later, the sedan bounced over the rough terrain as Kate approached a cluster of buildings nestled against a rocky hillside. The property was surrounded by a chain-link fence, with no trespassing signs at regular intervals. A gate blocked the dirt driveway, secured with a heavy chain and padlock. Kate parked and approached on foot, scanning for security systems. She found them quickly: motion sensors, cameras disguised as rocks, and what appeared to be a buried perimeter detection system. Whoever Frank Murphy was, he valued his privacy and had the technical knowledge to protect it. Rather than attempting to breach the security, she stood in full view of one of the cameras and called out, "My name is Catherine Harrison. Colonel William Davidson sent me. I need to speak with Frank Murphy." For several long moments, nothing happened. Then a crackling voice emerged from a hidden speaker. "Davidson hasn't been here in 5 years. What's your business?" "I'm Robert Harrison's daughter," she replied, "and I think my father might still be alive." Another pause, longer this time. Then the gate began to slide open automatically. "Drive in," the voice instructed. "Follow the road to the main house. Any deviation and the security systems will respond accordingly." Kate retrieved the car and drove through the gate, which closed behind her. The driveway wound between rock formations until it opened onto a clearing where a sprawling, single-story house stood, built partly into the hillside. Solar panels covered the roof, and satellite dishes of various sizes were positioned around the property. As she stepped out of the car, the front door opened to reveal a lean, weathered man in his late 60s, his white hair cropped short in a military style that suggested old habits die hard. He held a shotgun casually but competently in his hands. "You've got guts showing up here, Captain Harrison," he said, his voice the same one she'd heard over the speaker. "Especially since I'm guessing you're now AWOL. "Technically, I'm on medical leave," Kate replied, keeping her hands visible. "And yes, I took an unauthorized detour." Murphy studied her for a long moment, his pale blue eyes sharp and assessing. "You look like him," he finally said. "Same eyes, same stubborn set to the jaw." He lowered the shotgun slightly. "What makes you think Robert is alive?" "Surveillance photos taken in Baghdad and Dubai, years after his supposed death." Kate met his gaze directly. "And the fact that the same people who faked his death just tried to kill me." Murphy's expression hardened. "Quantum Aerospace, Charles Westfield." Kate felt a surge of confirmation. "Yes, you know him?" "I knew him when he was still going by his real name, Charles West, CIA operative attached to the early neural interface programs in the 1980s. Murphy gestured toward the house. "Come inside. We don't have much time before they track you here." The interior of Murphy's home was unexpected. A sophisticated command center disguised as a rustic desert dwelling. Advanced computers lined one wall, monitoring systems displayed security feeds, and satellite communications equipment hummed quietly in the background. 30 years in military aerospace teaches you to be prepared," Murphy explained, noting her surprise, "especially when you know too many secrets." He moved to a locked cabinet, opening it to reveal a small arsenal of weapons. "Help yourself. Once they realize you're gone, they'll come looking." Kate selected a 9mm pistol similar to her service weapon, checking it with practiced efficiency. "How do you know about quantum aerospace in Westfield?" Murphy activated a computer terminal, bringing up files that appeared to be from classified military archives. "Because I was there at the beginning. Project Blackbird, the first attempt to create a neural interface between pilot and aircraft, 1986 to 1989. The screen displayed black and white photographs of test subjects in primitive versions of the neural helmets, their faces contorted in pain or blank with induced catatonia. "They weren't trying to enhance pilots back then," Murphy continued grimly. "They were trying to control them. turn them into perfect weapons without conscience or hesitation. The technology wasn't ready. Most subjects suffered psychosis, brain damage, or death. Kate stared at the images, a cold horror growing inside her. And my father? Was he part of this? Not the original program. Robert came later, in the early 2000s, when they revived the research with improved technology. Murphy pulled up another file, a military service record for Lieutenant Colonel Robert Harrison. Your father was brought in as a test pilot for the second-generation system, codenamed Apollo. What he didn't know was that Westfield had a parallel program running called Prometheus, funded through black-budget channels. The same name they're using now, Kate noted. They're not subtle when they think they're untouchable. Murphy's expression darkened. Robert discovered the parallel program. He found evidence that Westfield was feeding the technology to foreign interests through cutouts and shell companies. When he threatened to expose it, they arranged his accident. But they didn't kill him, Kate said, remembering the surveillance photos. No. Robert knew too much about the neural interface. They needed him alive, at least until they could extract everything he knew. Murphy hesitated. And there was another reason. Your father had something they wanted even more than his knowledge. What? A rare genetic trait that made him uniquely compatible with the neural interface, a specific neurological structure that allowed his brain to integrate with the system without the rejection and damage other subjects experienced. Murphy looked at her meaningfully. A trait that appears to be hereditary. Understanding dawned on Kate with chilling clarity. That's why I was selected for the Aurora program. Not because of my skills or my record, but because of my DNA. Your skills made you valuable. Your genetics made you invaluable. Murphy pulled up another file, Kate's own medical records from the Aurora program. Your adaptation rate to the Athena system was unprecedented. You achieved integration levels that their best subjects couldn't match after months of conditioning. Kate absorbed this, connecting it to her strange perceptual experiences since the crash. The changes in my brain, they're not just side effects, are they? They're what Westfield was hoping for all along. Exactly. You're the proof of concept they've been working toward for decades. A human whose neural structure can fully integrate with their interface technology. Murphy's voice dropped lower. And now that they know it's possible, they'll never let you go. A warning alarm suddenly blared from Murphy's security system. He moved quickly to the monitors, checking the perimeter sensors. We've got company, multiple vehicles approaching from the east, military signatures. Kate moved to the window, seeing dust clouds rising in the distance. They found us faster than I expected. They probably had a tracker in your vehicle, Murphy said, already gathering equipment. We need to move. There's a tunnel system under the house, leads to a hangar on the other side of the ridge. I keep a plane ready, old habits. As they prepared to evacuate, Kate asked the question that had been burning in her since seeing the surveillance photos. Do you think my father is still alive? Murphy paused, his weathered face softening slightly. Based on the intelligence I've gathered, yes. Westfield's holding him at a quantum aerospace research facility in the mountains north of here. It's where they've been developing their drone program. We need to get him out, Kate said with quiet determination. That's suicide with just the two of us, Murphy replied, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely opposed to the idea. The facility is a fortress, with security that would make Fort Knox look like a convenience store. I didn't say it would be easy. Kate checked her weapon one final time. But if he's alive, I'm going to find him. After we get away from here. Murphy studied her for a moment, then nodded. You really are Robert's daughter. He shouldered a go-bag filled with supplies. Let's move. We can discuss impossible rescue missions after we escape this one. They descended into the concealed tunnel beneath the house, a surprisingly modern passageway with lighting and ventilation. As they moved deeper into the hillside, Kate heard the distant sound of helicopters approaching. Blackhawk transports, Murphy identified without looking up. Full tactical team, probably with orders to take you alive if possible. And you? Kate asked. Murphy's smile was grim. I'm expendable. Have been for 30 years. The tunnel opened into a small underground hangar where a modified Cessna 206 waited, fueled, and ready. Unlike the standard civilian model, this aircraft had been extensively customized: reinforced airframe, upgraded engine, and what appeared to be electronic countermeasures built into the fuselage. "Another old habit," Murphy explained as he began pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency. "Always have an escape plan." Kate helped prepare the aircraft, falling easily into the co-pilot role. Despite the circumstances, she felt a familiar calm settling over her, the focused clarity that came with flight preparations. As Murphy opened the concealed hangar doors, revealing a hidden runway carved into the desert landscape, the first explosions echoed from the direction of the house. The tactical team had arrived and was clearly not taking chances with the main structure. "Time to go," Murphy announced, gunning the engine. The Cessna accelerated down the runway as black smoke billowed from beyond the ridge. Just as they lifted off, a helicopter crested the hillside, its door gunner tracking their ascent. "Hang on," Murphy warned, immediately throwing the aircraft into a steep turn that no standard Cessna should have been able to execute. The sudden G-forces pressed Kate back into her seat, but her body handled the strain better than she expected. Another consequence of her neural changes. The helicopter pursued, gaining on them as they weaved between rock formations. A burst of gunfire stitched the air nearby, missing the Cessna's wing by inches. "There's a package under your seat," Murphy called over the engine's roar. "3 switches, red button." Kate retrieved what appeared to be a modified signal jammer, following Murphy's instructions to activate it. The device hummed to life in her hands. "Point it at our friends back there," Murphy directed, banking the aircraft sharply around a mesa. Kate aimed the device at the pursuing helicopter. When she pressed the red button, the jammer emitted a high-pitched whine. The helicopter immediately began to wobble, its flight systems apparently compromised by whatever signal the device was broadcasting. The Black Hawk veered away, descending rapidly but controllably, the pilot choosing emergency landing over potential crash. 2 more helicopters appeared on the horizon, but Murphy was already guiding the Cessna into a narrow canyon where their larger pursuers couldn't follow. "That won't hold them for long," he warned. "They'll have jets scrambled within minutes." "Where are we going?" Kate asked, scanning the sky for additional threats. "First, to shake our pursuit, then to an old friend who can help us disappear properly." Murphy glanced at her. "After that, if you're still determined to find your father, we'll need a plan that doesn't end with both of us dead or captured." The Cessna hugged the canyon walls, flying dangerously low but effectively masking their radar signature. Murphy handled the controls with the confidence of someone who had spent a lifetime pushing aircraft to their limits, reminding Kate of the stories she'd heard about the legendary test pilots of the 1950s and 60s. "You flew the early stealth prototypes, didn't you?" she asked, recognizing certain techniques in his handling. Murphy nodded. F117 development program. Before that, experimental VTOL platforms, back when test pilots still died regularly. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Your father and I crossed paths during the Joint Strike Fighter competition. He was younger, but he had the same instincts, could feel an aircraft's soul through the controls." They emerged from this canyon into open desert, immediately diving to maintain their low profile. In the distance, Kate could see dust clouds from ground vehicles, the pursuit spreading out to cut off escape routes. "They really want you back," Murphy observed grimly. "Not me," Kate corrected. "What's in my head?" She touched her temple, where occasional pulses of unusual sensation still manifested. "The question is, why now? Neural interface research has been ongoing for decades. What's changed that makes this so urgent?" Murphy banked the aircraft toward a distant mountain range. The breakthrough isn't just the interface technology. It's the AI behind it. Westfield's team has developed an artificial intelligence system advanced enough to operate their drone fleet autonomously, but with one critical vulnerability. It can be compromised by conventional countermeasures. So they need a human component, Kate concluded. A pilot whose brain can interface directly with the AI, providing the human intuition and decision-making that pure automation lacks. Exactly. A hybrid system. Human creativity and machine precision. Murphy's expression darkened. And they've spent 30 years and billions of dollars creating the perfect pilots for it, through selective breeding, genetic screening, and neural conditioning. The implications hit Kate with devastating clarity. My father wasn't just selected for the program because of his natural abilities. They planned this from the beginning, including me. Murphy's silence confirmed her suspicion. How deep does this go? She asked quietly. How high up? To the very top, Murphy replied. This isn't a rogue operation, Kate. It's official policy disguised as a black project. Prometheus isn't the enemy. They're the planned opposition, created to justify the development of weapon systems that would never be approved otherwise. Kate processed this, her worldview shifting painfully. Everything she had believed about her service, her father's sacrifice, even her own career choices, was being reframed as part of a decades-long manipulation. And Rick Thornton? Was he part of this from the beginning? Westfield's insurance policy, Murphy confirmed, placed to keep an eye on you and eliminate you if necessary. When you proved more valuable alive than dead, his mission changed to sabotaging the Aurora and discrediting the Air Force program, giving Quantum Aerospace the opening to take over. A warning light flashed on the Cessna's modified instrument panel. Radar lock from the east. F-22s, Murphy announced grimly. They're not taking chances anymore. He pushed the aircraft lower, skimming dangerously close to the desert floor. There's a dry lake bed 2 miles ahead. We can't outrun them, so we need to disappear. He handed Kate a small device resembling a remote detonator. When I give the word, press the button. The Cessna shot out over the vast white expanse of the dry lake, its shadow racing beneath them on the cracked earth. The fighter jets were visible now, 2 sleek Predators closing rapidly from behind. Now, Murphy commanded. Kate pressed the button. Immediately, a series of explosions erupted across the lake bed ahead of them, sending massive clouds of dust and smoke billowing upward. Murphy plunged the Cessna directly into the artificial sandstorm, cutting engine power to reduce their heat signature. Through the swirling chaos, Kate glimpsed the dark outline of what appeared to be a cave entrance in a rocky outcropping at the lake's edge. Murphy aimed for it with unerring precision, bringing the aircraft to a jarring but controlled landing on the rough terrain just inside the cavern's mouth. Out, he ordered, already shutting down systems. They'll have thermal imaging, and this cave only masks us temporarily. They abandoned the aircraft, moving deeper into the surprisingly large cavern system. Murphy retrieved camouflaged packs from a hidden cache, handing one to Kate. You've used this escape route before, she observed. I told you, old habits. Murphy activated a small device that sent a signal into the cave's darkness. Lights illuminated along the floor, revealing a path forward. This way. There's an underground river system that leads to a ranger station 5 miles south. My contact will meet us there after dark. As they moved through the caves, the distant sound of the fighter jets circling above gradually faded. Kate felt the weight of her situation settling fully upon her. She was now a fugitive from the very institution she had sworn to serve, pursued by her own government, with only a reclusive former test pilot as an ally. And somewhere, perhaps still alive, was her father, a man whose disappearance now appeared to be part of a conspiracy far larger and more insidious than she had ever imagined. Frank, she said, as they navigated the narrow passages, if what you're saying is true, if this goes all the way to the top, then who can we possibly trust? Murphy paused, turning to face her with eyes that had seen too much duplicity to harbor any illusions. Trust? No one in a uniform or a suit. But there are others like me, people who saw too much and got out. A network that watches the watchers. Your father was part of it before they took him. And that's who we're meeting? Yes. Someone who can get us to the Quantum Aerospace facility. Murphy resumed walking, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. Someone who wants to find your father almost as much as you do. Hours later, as darkness fell across the desert, they emerged from the cave system into a secluded valley. A small ranger station stood dark and apparently abandoned beside a dirt access road. Murphy approached cautiously, checking for signs of surveillance before signaling Kate to follow. They waited in the shadows of the station's porch, listening to the night sounds of the desert, the distant howl of coyotes, the rustle of wind through scrub brush. Kate's military training kept her alert despite her exhaustion, her mind cataloging escape routes and defensive positions automatically. Headlights appeared in the distance, approaching slowly along the dirt road. Murphy tensed beside her, his hand moving to his concealed weapon. The vehicle, an older model Jeep with dust-covered windows, pulled up to the station and stopped, its lights extinguished, plunging the area back into darkness. A moment of tense silence followed before the driver's door opened. A figure stepped out, female, medium height, moving with the careful precision of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. "It's been a long time, Frank," called a familiar voice that sent a shock of recognition through Kate. Dr. Helen Carter, the physician from Nellis Air Force Base, stepped into the moonlight. "You're late, Helen," Murphy replied, stepping forward to embrace her briefly. "But your timing is still better than most." Carter turned to Kate, her expression apologetic. "I'm sorry for the deception, Captain Harrison. My position at Nellis was necessary to monitor the Aurora program, and to protect you when the time came." "You're part of this network?" Kate asked, struggling to reconcile the quiet physician with the woman standing confidently before her now. "For 10 years, Carter confirmed, since they recruited me to work on the neural mapping program, and I discovered what they were really doing with my research." She gestured to the Jeep. "We need to move. They've established checkpoints on all major roads within a 100-mile radius." As they climbed into the vehicle, Kate's mind raced with questions, but one burned brighter than all others. The question that had driven her since seeing those surveillance photos. "Dr. Carter," she began. "Helen," the woman corrected. "Dr. Carter doesn't exist outside of Nellis." "Helen," Kate acknowledged. "Is my father still alive?" Carter exchanged a glance with Murphy before answering. "Yes, we confirmed his location at the quantum facility 3 weeks ago." "But, Kate," she hesitated, "he may not be the man you remember. The neural interface they've been using on him for years has changed him." "Changed how?" "The interface works both ways," Murphy explained grimly. "It doesn't just allow the pilot to control the aircraft. It allows whoever controls the interface to influence the pilot. Memories, personality, even core values can be altered with prolonged exposure." The implication sent a chill through Kate. "You're saying they've brainwashed him?" "Reprogrammed might be more accurate," Carter said softly. "But we believe the original Robert Harrison still exists beneath the conditioning, and if anyone can reach him—" She left the sentence unfinished, but her meaning was clear. Kate stared out at the dark desert landscape rushing past. Her father was alive, but transformed into someone else, someone shaped by years of neural manipulation. And now she too carried the changes of the interface within her brain. The parallel was not lost on her. Whatever happened next, whether they succeeded in rescuing Robert Harrison or not, Kate knew she was following in her father's footsteps in more ways than she had ever imagined. The question was whether his path would lead to her salvation or her destruction. As the Jeep raced through the night toward a confrontation that would determine not only her father's fate, but potentially the future of warfare itself, Kate made a silent promise: she would find the truth, no matter the cost. And those responsible for turning her father, and nearly her, into weapons would face justice. The desert night enveloped the vehicle, stars burning cold and distant overhead. Somewhere ahead lay the quantum aerospace facility, her father, and answers to questions that had haunted her for a decade. Behind her lay everything she had known and believed in. Catherine Harrison, once the Air Force's elite test pilot, was now its quarry. But she was also something more, something Westfield and his conspirators had created but could no longer control. Their perfect weapon had developed a will of her own, and she was coming for them. The quantum aerospace facility rose from the Nevada mountains like a fortress of the modern age, all gleaming glass and reinforced concrete, its perimeter secured by state-of-the-art surveillance systems and armed guards. From their vantage point on a ridge 2 miles away, Kate studied the compound through high-powered binoculars, committing every detail to memory. 3 guard shifts rotating every 8 hours, she noted. Perimeter patrols, drone surveillance, and what looks like subsurface motion sensors. They're not taking any chances. Beside her, Frank Murphy adjusted his own field glasses, his weathered face grim in the fading twilight. The real security is inside. Biometric scanners, armed response teams, and a central section that's completely isolated from the main facility. That's where they'll be keeping your father. Helen Carter unfolded a tablet displaying schematics of the building, blueprints obtained through means she hadn't explained. The isolation unit has its own power supply, ventilation, and security protocols. It's designed to continue functioning even if the rest of the facility is compromised. Kate lowered the binoculars, her enhanced vision allowing her to pick out details that would have been invisible to her before the neural interface. The changes to her brain had continued to manifest in unexpected ways: sharper perception, accelerated processing, an almost intuitive understanding of complex systems. The doctors had called it neural interface rejection syndrome, but she was beginning to suspect it was exactly the opposite. Her brain adapting to the interface more completely than anyone had anticipated. "How did you get these schematics?" she asked Carter. "We have someone on the inside," Carter replied, her expression revealing nothing. "Someone who's been feeding us information for months. They've confirmed your father's location in the isolation unit, along with the security protocols." "Can we trust this source?" Kate pressed, the military strategist in her naturally suspicious of intelligence that seemed too convenient. Murphy and Carter exchanged a look before Murphy spoke. "The source is Richard Thornton." Kate felt as if she'd been struck. "Rick? The same Rick who betrayed the Aurora program, who tried to kill me?" Her voice hardened with anger. "The man who's working for Westfield?" "It's complicated," Carter said cautiously. "Thornton was recruited by Westfield years ago, but his loyalties have become divided. He's been playing both sides. Why would he help us now?" "Because he's seen what they're doing in there," Murphy explained grimly. "The neural reprogramming, the drone integration testing, the plans for deployment. Even Thornton has lines he won't cross." Kate wasn't convinced. "Or it's a trap. Get us inside, then capture or kill us all at once." "It's a risk," Murphy acknowledged. "But without his intel, we'd have no chance of reaching your father. The security systems are too advanced for a frontal approach." Kate studied the schematics again, her enhanced perception allowing her to process the complex layout more efficiently than she could have before. Something about the design struck her as familiar, echoes of military installations she'd seen, but with subtle differences that suggested adaptation for a specific purpose. "This facility wasn't built just for research," she observed. "The central section, it's designed like a command center. They're planning to operate from here, aren't they? To launch their drone program soon." Carter nodded. "According to Thornton, they're preparing for a demonstration in 3 days, a showcase for military officials and private investors, proof that their Prometheus system is operational and ready for deployment." "With my father as the centerpiece," Kate said quietly. "The perfect interface pilot." "That's our window," Murphy pointed out. "During the demonstration, security protocols will be adjusted to accommodate visitors. Thornton has provided temporary credentials that will get us through the outer perimeter." Kate wasn't ready to trust the plan, or Thornton, but she recognized that time was running out. If the demonstration proceeded as scheduled, her father would be further integrated into the Prometheus system, making any rescue attempt even more difficult. "What's our infiltration vector?" she asked. Fully into tactical planning mode, Carter indicated a service entrance on the facility's east side. "Maintenance access, minimum security. Thornton has arranged for a delivery tomorrow morning. Replacement parts for the climate control system. We'll be inside the shipment." "And once we're in?" "We split up," Murphy explained. "Carter accesses the security center to disable the internal systems. I create a diversion in the main research wing. You proceed to the isolation unit to extract your father." Kate studied the route to the isolation unit, a complex path through areas marked with biometric checkpoints and armed security. "How do I get past the internal security?" Carter handed her a small device that resembled a medical injector. "This contains a neutralized sample of your father's DNA, combined with trace elements from the neural interface. The system is programmed to recognize his unique neural genetic signature. With your genetic similarity and neural adaptation, this should fool the scanners long enough for you to pass." The plan was audacious, dependent on precision timing and multiple assumptions about the facility's security measures. Under normal circumstances, Kate would have considered it too risky. But these weren't normal circumstances, and the stakes couldn't be higher. "And extraction, she asked, always thinking 3 steps ahead. "Thornton has arranged for a maintenance vehicle to be left near the east entrance," Murphy replied. "See, once we have your father, we head for the rendezvous point 20 miles south. I have a contact with a private aircraft who can get us across the border into Mexico." Kate absorbed the plan, analyzing weak points and contingencies with the strategic clarity that had made her an exceptional officer. There were too many variables, too many opportunities for failure, but no better options presented themselves. "We move at dawn," she decided, returning her attention to the facility below. The lights had begun to come on as darkness fell, illuminating the complex like a small city nestled against the mountainside. Somewhere within those walls was her father, the man who had taught her to fly, whose legacy had shaped her entire life, and who now existed as both captive and weapon in a conspiracy that spanned decades. I'm coming, Dad, she whispered to herself. Just hold on a little longer. The night passed with agonizing slowness as they made final preparations. Kate checked and rechecked the equipment Carter had provided: a sidearm with sound suppressor, communications devices designed to bypass standard security scans, and the DNA injector that would be her key to the isolation unit. Sleep eluded her despite her body's need for rest. Every time she closed her eyes, fragmented images flashed through her mind: memories of her father, scenes from the Aurora crash, glimpses of something else, something not her own. It was as if the neural interface had left behind echoes of another consciousness, fragments that surfaced in moments of quiet. She found Murphy sitting outside their hidden campsite before dawn, watching the stars fade from the sky. The former test pilot's face was contemplative, displaying none of the tension she felt. Couldn't sleep either? She asked, settling beside him on a rock outcropping. Murphy shook his head. Haven't slept well in 30 years, not since I saw what they were doing with the neural interface technology. He glanced at her. How's your head? Kate touched her temple, where occasional pulses of sensation still manifested. Different. It's like seeing in a new color, processing information in ways I never could before. The interface changes you, Murphy said quietly. Rewires neural pathways, creates new connections. Some of those changes are intentional, designed by the system architects. Others are unexpected. Is that what happened to my father, these unexpected changes? Murphy's expression grew solemn. Your father was exposed to multiple versions of the interface over years, each one more invasive than the last. The changes would be far more extensive. He hesitated before continuing. You need to be prepared, Kate. The man in that facility may look like Robert Harrison, but his mind may be altered in ways we can't predict. He's still my father, Kate insisted, though a cold knot of dread formed in her stomach. Whatever they've done to him, I'll find a way to undo it. Murphy didn't argue, but his silence conveyed skepticism. He had seen too much of what the technology could do to harbor false hope. Dawn brought a tense focus as they moved into position near the service road leading to the facility's east entrance. The delivery truck appeared right on schedule, a nondescript vehicle with Quantum Aerospace Service credentials prominently displayed. The driver, apparently one of Thornton's contacts, stopped briefly at their hidden location. Without a word, he opened the truck's rear compartment, revealing a large shipping container secured among legitimate maintenance equipment. Carter quickly confirmed the container was equipped with oxygen supplies and concealed exits as promised. They climbed inside, the space cramped but sufficient for 3 people and their minimal gear. The driver sealed the container, leaving them in darkness broken only by a small red indicator light, showing that the oxygen system was functioning. 20 minutes to the security checkpoint, Carter whispered. Another 10 to the unloading zone. Remember, absolute silence from this point forward. The journey seemed endless, punctuated by the vibration of the truck's engine and occasional stops that Kate assumed were security checkpoints. She focused on controlling her breathing, using techniques developed for high-altitude flight to maximize oxygen efficiency. Finally, the truck stopped and went silent. Kate felt the container being moved, likely by a forklift or automated transport system. The sensation of motion continued for several minutes before the container settled with a slight jolt. Carter checked a device on her wrist, then nodded. We're inside the maintenance staging area. Thermal scans show 2 technicians nearby, but they should leave within 5 minutes according to the schedule. They waited in tense silence until Carter's device indicated the coast was clear. She activated the container's hidden release mechanism, and one side slid open silently, revealing a dimly lit storage room filled with equipment and spare parts. We're in, Murphy whispered, helping them exit the container. Stick to the plan. Rendezvous at the extraction point in 90 minutes. If anyone doesn't make it, the others proceed as planned. Kate checked her watch, synchronizing it with the others. The reality of their situation settled upon her with cold clarity. They were now inside one of the most secure facilities in the country, with only a traitor's word and stolen blueprints to guide them. Carter handed each of them a small communication device that fitted discreetly in the ear. These operate on a frequency that bypasses standard security scans. Minimal communication only, and switch to the backup channel if you suspect compromise. With a final nod of acknowledgement, they separated. Carter headed toward the security center, Murphy toward the main research wing, and Kate toward the central isolation unit where her father was allegedly being held. The facility's interior was clinically sterile, all white walls, polished floors, and recessed lighting. Security cameras tracked movement at key junctions. But Carter had mapped their blind spots, allowing Kate to progress deeper into the complex without detection. She encountered her first biometric checkpoint sooner than expected, a sealed doorway with a palm scanner and retinal reader. Following Carter's instructions, she administered the DNA injector to her palm, feeling a momentary sting as the device deposited the genetic material just beneath her skin. Kate placed her hand on the scanner, holding her breath as the system processed. The display flashed amber, not a full authorization, but not a rejection either. After a tense moment, the light turned green and the door slid open with a soft hiss. "First checkpoint cleared," she whispered into her communication device. "Security systems normal," came Carter's quiet response. "No alarms triggered. Proceed to junction B7. Kate moved deeper into the facility, her senses heightened by both training and neural enhancement. She could perceive subtle differences in air pressure that indicated hidden security measures, changes in the ambient electromagnetic field suggesting surveillance systems. At junction B7, she encountered a guard, the first human security she'd seen inside. He was stationed beside an elevator that, according to the schematics, led down to the isolation unit level. There was no way to reach the elevator without being seen. Kate assessed her options quickly. Neutralizing the guard silently would be possible, but an unconscious or dead security officer would eventually be discovered, triggering a facility-wide alert. Before she could decide on a course of action, her earpiece crackled. "Diversion initiating in 30 seconds, Murphy announced. "Be ready." Exactly 30 seconds later, alarms blared from the direction of the research wing. The guard at the elevator immediately responded, speaking urgently into his radio before moving away from his post toward the disturbance. Kate seized the opportunity, slipping to the elevator and using the genetic key to gain access. The doors opened immediately and she stepped inside, selecting the lowest level, a section marked simply as restricted on the control panel. The elevator descended rapidly, and Kate used the brief journey to prepare herself mentally. Whatever condition her father might be in, whatever changes the neural interface had wrought on his mind, she needed to remain focused on the extraction. When the doors opened, she found herself in an environment unlike the upper levels. Here, the clinical sterility gave way to something more akin to a high-tech medical facility. The lighting was dimmer, with a bluish tint that created an otherworldly atmosphere. The air carried the faint scent of ozone and antiseptics. Kate moved cautiously through the quiet corridors, following the path indicated in the schematics. According to Thornton's intelligence, her father would be housed in a specialized chamber at the center of this level, a room designed for the final stages of neural integration. She encountered no personnel, which seemed strange given the importance of this section. Either the diversion had drawn away the security, or this area was normally maintained with minimal human presence. The answer became clear as she approached the central chamber. Through a reinforced glass observation window, she could see a room filled with advanced equipment surrounding a single reclined chair. In the chair, connected to multiple monitoring systems by a web of cables and sensors, was a man. Even from a distance, even after 10 years, Kate recognized her father immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Harrison, once one of the Air Force's most decorated pilots, lay motionless, his head encased in what appeared to be an advanced version of the Athena helmet. His body was thin, almost frail, his once powerful frame diminished by years of captivity. Kate's throat tightened with emotion, but she forced herself to remain focused. The chamber was secured by another biometric lock, this one more sophisticated than those she had encountered previously. She applied the genetic key again, but this time the scanner remained red. The system wasn't accepting the spoofed credentials. "I can't access the central chamber," she whispered into her communication device. "The genetic key isn't working." After a moment of silence, Carter responded, "I'm seeing increased security protocols in that section. They must have implemented additional measures recently." A pause. "Hold position. I'm attempting to override from the security center." Kate waited, watching her father through the glass. He showed no signs of consciousness, though monitoring displays indicated normal vital signs. What had they done to him? How much of Robert Harrison remained beneath the neural conditioning? Her thoughts were interrupted by a new voice in her earpiece, a voice that sent a chill through her spine. "The override won't work, Kate." Richard Thornton's voice was calm, professional. "The isolation unit has independent security that can't be accessed from the main systems." "Thornton," she hissed, "I should have known this was a trap." "If it were a trap, you'd already be surrounded by security teams," he replied evenly. "I'm trying to help you, but we don't have much time. Murphy's diversion has triggered the emergency protocols. The facility will begin automated lockdown in approximately 3 minutes." Kate's mind raced, assessing the situation with tactical precision. If Thornton wanted her captured, he could have arranged it already. But trusting him went against every instinct she had. "Why should I believe you?" she demanded. "You tried to kill me in the Aurora." "I was following orders," Thornton replied, his voice tightening slightly. "But I've seen what they're planning to do with the Prometheus system. It goes beyond anything I signed up for." A pause. "Your father is the key to stopping it. That's why I'm helping you now." Kate made her decision. "How do I get into the chamber?" "There's a manual override for emergency medical access. Panel to the right of the door, behind the fire suppression controls." Kate found the panel and opened it, revealing a keypad and card reader. "I need a code." 847193, Thornton provided immediately, and swiped the genetic keycard through the reader simultaneously. She followed his instructions, relief washing through her as the door's locks disengaged with a series of metallic clicks. The heavy door swung open, admitting her to the chamber where her father lay motionless. Up close, the changes in Robert Harrison were even more apparent. His once dark hair had gone completely gray, his face lined with age and strain. The neural interface helmet covered most of his head, with only his face visible, eyes closed as if in deep sleep. "Dad," Kate whispered, approaching cautiously. "Dad, it's me. It's Kate." No response. The monitoring equipment continued its steady rhythm, displaying neural activity patterns that meant nothing to her. "He can't hear you," Thornton said through the earpiece. "The interface has him in a controlled theta state, a form of induced coma that maximizes neural plasticity. You need to disconnect him carefully, or the shock could cause permanent brain damage." "Tell me how," Kate demanded, studying the complex array of connections between her father and the machines. Thornton guided her through the process. Which cables to disconnect first? Which systems to power down in sequence? Kate worked quickly but carefully, her hands steady despite the emotional turmoil within her. As the last connection was severed, her father's eyes remained closed, but the monitor showed a gradual shift in brain activity, from the artificially controlled patterns to more natural rhythms. "He's stabilizing," she reported, checking his pulse. "But he's not waking up." "He won't," Thornton explained. "Not immediately. His brain needs time to adjust after prolonged interface connection. You need to move him now. Facility lockdown initiates in less than 2 minutes." Kate carefully removed the neural helmet, exposing her father's full face for the first time. The sight nearly broke her composure. Electrodes embedded directly into his scalp, small scars indicating previous surgical procedures. Whatever they had done to him went far beyond the non-invasive interface she had experienced. With gentle efficiency, she disconnected the remaining monitoring equipment and gathered her father into her arms. Despite his thin frame, moving him was awkward, but Kate's enhanced physiology provided strength beyond her normal capacity. "I've got him," she announced, moving to extraction with action point. "Security teams are converging on the research wing," Carter reported. "Murphy's diversion was effective, but they're beginning to realize it's a distraction. You have a clear path to the service elevator if you move now." Kate maneuvered her father out of the chamber and back toward the elevator, his unconscious form draped across her shoulders in a fireman's carry. The journey that had seemed challenging during infiltration now became a desperate race against time. Burdened by her father's weight and the facility's imminent lockdown, she reached the elevator just as distant alarms began to sound, the lockdown sequence initiating. The door slid open at her approach, and she practically fell inside with her precious cargo. "Elevator secured," she gasped into her communication device. "Heading to extraction point." "Change of plans," Murphy's voice came through, strained and breathless. "Main extraction route is compromised. Security teams have the east entrance blocked." "Alternative?" Kate asked, selecting the level for the maintenance area where they had entered. "Loading docks, west side," Thornton interjected. "I've arranged for a transport vehicle, but you'll need to move fast. The loading area won't be included in the initial lockdown protocols, but security will expand the perimeter within minutes. The elevator ascended rapidly, and Kate used the brief respite to check her father's condition. His breathing remained steady, his pulse strong despite his fragile appearance. Physically, at least, he was stable. When the doors opened, Kate found herself in an unfamiliar corridor, the wrong level. Before she could select another destination, the elevator shut down completely, the control panel going dark as the lockdown protocols spread throughout the facility. "Elevator's dead," she reported, urgency rising in her voice. "What level am I on?" After a moment, Carter responded, "Level 3, Research Division. You're 2 levels above the loading docks. There's a maintenance stairwell 30 meters east of your position." Kate adjusted her father's weight and moved out of the elevator, immediately encountering the facility's increased security posture. Emergency lights pulsed along the corridors, and distant announcements called for all personnel to report to secure locations. She located the maintenance stairwell where Carter had indicated, using her shoulder to push through the door, while maintaining her hold on her father. The stairs would be challenging with her burden, but there was no alternative. "Murphy Carter, status," she called into her communication device as she began the descent. "Security center compromised," Carter replied, her voice tight with tension. "I'm extracting now, heading for the rendezvous point." "Murphy?" Kate pressed when no response came from the former test pilot. "Only static," answered her. "Murphy's been captured," Thornton informed her, his voice grim. "Security teams cornered him in the research wing. You need to keep moving. I'll try to create another diversion to clear your path to the loading docks." Kate continued her painful descent, each step a test of her enhanced strength and determination. Her father remained unresponsive, a dead weight across her shoulders that grew heavier with each passing moment. Finally reaching the ground level, she paused to catch her breath and check her surroundings. Through the stairwell door's small window, she could see a corridor that appeared to lead toward the western section of the facility. "I'm at ground level," she whispered. "Which way to the loading docks from the southwest stairwell?" "Left out of the stairwell, second right, then straight ahead past the security checkpoint," Thornton directed. "The checkpoint will be manned, but I'm triggering a fire alarm in the adjacent section to draw them away. Move when you hear it." Seconds later, alarms blared from somewhere nearby. Kate watched through the window as 2 security personnel abandoned their post. Moving quickly toward the source of the alarm, she seized the opportunity, pushing through the door and moving as rapidly as possible with her father's unconscious form. The corridor stretched endlessly before her, each step an agony of effort and fear of discovery. The loading docks appeared ahead, a large open area with multiple bay doors currently sealed for the lockdown. One smaller personnel door remained accessible, with an emergency exit sign glowing above it. "I see the exit," Kate reported, "but it's probably alarmed." "It is," Thornton confirmed, "but the alarm will be lost among the others currently sounding. Go through. There's a transport vehicle waiting on the other side, engine running." Kate hesitated, suspicion flaring again. "And you? Where are you in all this?" A moment of silence followed before Thornton answered. "Trying to give you a chance to escape with your father. I can't leave. They'd know immediately that I helped you, but I can cover your tracks from inside." "Why, Rick, after everything?" "Because I was wrong," he replied simply. "About the program, about you, about a lot of things. Now go, before security redirects to your position." Kate made her decision, pushing through the exit door and into the early morning light. As promised, a nondescript utility vehicle waited nearby, its engine idling quietly. She maneuvered her father into the passenger seat before sliding behind the wheel. The facility's external gates were closing as part of the lockdown procedure, but the vehicle's path remained clear for the moment. Kate accelerated toward the perimeter, expecting resistance at any second. None came. The vehicle passed through the closing gates with inches to spare, and then they were outside the compound, speeding down the access road toward the rendezvous point. "I'm clear," she announced into her communication device. "Heading to rendezvous." "Acknowledged," Carter's voice came back. "I'm already there, no sign of Murphy." The rendezvous point was an abandoned mining site 20 miles south of the Quantum facility, remote enough to avoid immediate detection, but accessible by the rough desert roads. Kate pushed the utility vehicle to its limits, watching the rearview mirror for signs of pursuit. When she arrived, Carter was waiting beside a dust-covered SUV that hadn't been part of the original plan. The doctor rushed forward as Kate brought the vehicle to a stop. "You got him," Carter breathed, helping to extract Robert Harrison from the passenger seat. "How is he?" "Stable, but unconscious," Kate replied, gently transferring her father to the back seat of the SUV. Thornton said it would take time for him to wake up after being disconnected from the interface. Carter checked his vital signs with professional efficiency. Pulse is strong, breathing regular. But these neural implants… She frowned, examining the electrodes embedded in his scalp. "They're more extensive than anything I've seen before. We need to get him to a proper medical facility." "What about Murphy?" Kate asked, scanning the horizon for any sign of the former test pilot. Carter's expression turned grim. "No contact since he reported being cornered in the research wing. We have to assume he's been captured." The implications hung heavy between them. Murphy knew everything about their operation, their contacts, their safe houses. If quantum security teams extracted that information… "We need to move," Kate decided, pushing aside the guilt over Murphy's capture. "The longer we stay here, the greater the risk." "My contact is waiting with a plane at an airstrip 50 miles south," Carter explained, already moving to the driver's seat of the SUV. "From there, we can reach the border before Quantum mobilizes a full search operation." As they sped across the desert landscape, Kate remained in the back seat with her father, studying his face for any sign of returning consciousness. The man before her was simultaneously familiar and strange. Robert Harrison, and yet not, transformed by years of captivity and neural manipulation. "What did they do to you, Dad?" she whispered, tracing the lines of his weathered face with gentle fingers. "They used him as a test subject for each iteration of the interface," Carter explained from the front seat, her eyes on the rugged road ahead. "According to Thornton, your father's unique neural structure made him the perfect prototype for the system they've been developing. Each advancement in the technology was calibrated using his brain patterns." "And the purpose? What were they trying to create?" Carter's expression darkened. "A weaponized hive mind. The Prometheus system isn't just a neural interface for pilots. It's designed to link multiple pilots together into a single tactical network controlled by a central intelligence." "An AI?" Kate asked. The implications chilling. "Not exactly. More like a neural collective, with one dominant consciousness directing the others." Carter glanced back briefly. Your father was being prepared as that central node, the controlling mind for an entire fleet of neural-enhanced pilots operating advanced aircraft. A human strategist with machine-like processing capabilities, controlling human pilots who retain creativity and intuition, but follow commands without question. Kate looked down at her father's peaceful face, horror growing within her. They wanted to turn him into a puppet master for other puppets. "The perfect weapon system," Carter confirmed grimly. "Human creativity and intuition combined with machine efficiency and obedience. No AI limitations, no ethical restraints, just pure military effectiveness." The desert landscape blurred past as Kate processed this revelation. The neural changes she had experienced, the enhanced perception, the accelerated processing, were merely the beginning of what the technology could do. In her father, they had pushed it to its limits, transforming his mind into something both more and less than human. "Can he be restored?" she asked quietly. "Can the neural conditioning be reversed?" Carter hesitated before answering. "I don't know. No one has ever been disconnected from such extensive interface integration before. The physical implants can be removed, but the neural pathways that have been created or modified, that's unknown territory." Kate's jaw set with determination. "We'll find a way, whatever it takes." The airstrip appeared in the distance, a simple dirt runway with a small hangar at one end. A light aircraft waited outside the structure, a modified Cessna similar to the one Murphy had used in their escape from his compound. As Carter brought the SUV to a stop near the aircraft, a figure emerged from the hangar, a middle-aged man with the weathered appearance of a longtime desert dweller. "This is Carson," Carter introduced him. "Former Air Force, now flies supplies for some of the mining operations in the region. He'll get us across the border." Carson helped them transfer Robert Harrison to the aircraft, his expression betraying no curiosity about the unconscious man or the urgency of their situation. The code of the underground network was clear. Ask no questions, share no information beyond what was necessary. As they prepared for takeoff, Kate's attention was drawn to a dust cloud on the horizon, vehicles approaching rapidly from the north. "We've got company," she warned, calculating distances and speeds with instinctive precision. ETA 3 minutes. Carson accelerated his pre-flight checks while Carter secured Robert in the rear of the aircraft. Kate remained outside, watching the approaching vehicles with growing concern. "They're moving too fast," she observed. "Those aren't standard pursuit vehicles." As the dust cloud drew nearer, the distinctive shapes of military helicopters appeared above it, at least 3, advancing in tactical formation. Black Hawk helicopters. Kate identified them instantly. This isn't just quantum security. They've called in military assets. The implications were immediate and alarming. This level of response confirmed Murphy's claims about the connections between quantum aerospace and the highest levels of military command. They weren't just being pursued by a private security force. They faced the full resources of the United States government. "We need to go now," Kate ordered, climbing into the aircraft. "Carson, can you outrun helicopters?" The pilot's expression was grim as he completed the final preparations for takeoff. "Not in a straight line, but I know these mountains better than any flyboy in a Black Hawk. If we can reach the canyons to the south, we might lose them in the terrain." The Cessna's engine roared to life, and Carson taxied quickly to the dirt runway, not waiting for formal clearance or preparation. The approaching helicopters were now clearly visible, closing the distance with alarming speed. "Hang on," Carson warned as he pushed the throttle forward. The light aircraft accelerated down the rough runway, bouncing violently before lifting into the air just as the lead helicopter came within visual range. Kate knew immediately they were outmatched in terms of speed and firepower. The Blackhawks would overtake them within minutes in open airspace. Their only advantage was Carson's knowledge of the local terrain, and the Cessna's superior maneuverability in confined spaces. "Head for the canyons," she directed, drawing on her pilot's instincts. "Fly as low as possible to force them to match our altitude. It will limit their tactical options." Carson nodded in agreement, bringing the aircraft down to dangerously low altitude and setting course for the rugged canyon system visible to the south. The Cessna skimmed over the desert floor, creating a billowing dust trail in their wake. The Blackhawks adjusted their approach, spreading out to cover more area while maintaining pursuit. They were being piloted with military precision. These weren't private contractors, but trained military aviators. "They're not firing," Carter observed tensely. "They want to force us down, not shoot us down." "They want my father intact," Kate concluded. "And probably me as well. We're both too valuable to risk killing." The realization provided a slim tactical advantage. If the pursuers were constrained by orders to capture rather than kill, it limited their options and might buy precious time to reach the canyons. Carson pushed the Cessna to its limits, the aircraft shuddering from the strain of low-altitude, high-speed flight. The canyon entrance approached rapidly, a narrow opening between towering rock formations that would barely accommodate the small plane, much less the larger military helicopters. "This is going to be tight," Carson warned, his hands steady on the controls despite the danger. "These canyons are a maze. Local pilots call it the labyrinth. One wrong turn means a dead end in solid rock." The Cessna banked sharply as it entered the canyon, the walls closing in on either side with barely feet to spare. Behind them, the Blackhawks were forced to reduce speed and adjust their formation to navigate the narrow passage. Carson flew with remarkable skill, weaving through the twisting corridors of stone with the familiarity of long experience. Each turn brought new challenges, narrowing passages, sudden changes in elevation, wind currents that buffeted the small aircraft unpredictably. One of the Blackhawks attempted to follow their exact path, but was forced to pull up sharply when the passage narrowed beyond its rotor span. The other two adjusted, taking higher positions to maintain visual contact while sacrificing the close pursuit. "We're gaining some distance," Kate observed, watching the helicopters fall back slightly. "But they'll radio our position to ground units. They know where this canyon system exits." Carson's expression remained focused. "Who said anything about exiting where they expect? These canyons have dozens of branches. I know a few that don't appear on standard maps." He banked the aircraft into an even narrower side canyon, one that would be completely impassable for the larger helicopters. The Blackhawks were forced to maintain position above the main canyon, temporarily losing visual contact. The maze of stone passages continued for what seemed like eternity, each twist and turn bringing them deeper into the labyrinth. The pursuing helicopters became distant sounds, their rotors echoing off the canyon walls, but no longer directly behind them. Finally, the narrow passage opened into a broader canyon, that eventually led to a hidden valley tucked between mountain ranges, a natural sanctuary invisible from the air unless you knew exactly where to look. Carson brought the Cessna down on a crude airstrip that appeared to have been used infrequently, but maintained well enough for emergency landings. As the engine died, the sudden silence seemed almost overwhelming after the tension of their escape. "Welcome to nowhere," Carson announced with grim satisfaction. "Old mining claim from the 1950s, off every official map and shielded from thermal imaging by the surrounding rock formations. We're safe here, at least temporarily." Kate helped Carter extract her father from the aircraft, transferring him to a small cabin nestled against the valley wall. The structure was basic but functional, a single room with a bed, table, and wood-burning stove. "This is one of our emergency sanctuaries," Carter explained as they settled Robert on the bed. "Medical supplies, food, communications equipment. We can stay here until your father stabilizes and we determine our next move." Kate sat beside her father, watching his peaceful face for any sign of returning consciousness. Now that the immediate danger of pursuit had passed, the emotional impact of finding him alive after all these years threatened to overwhelm her carefully maintained composure. "How long?" she asked Carter, who was checking Robert's vital signs again. "Until he wakes? Impossible to say." Carter examined the neural implants with concern. The interface he was connected to was far more advanced than anything I've seen. The effects of disconnection are unpredictable. As if in response to their discussion, Robert Harrison's eyelids fluttered slightly. A small movement, but unmistakable. "Dad?" Kate leaned closer, hope surging within her. "Dad, can you hear me?" His eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually settling on her face. There was no immediate recognition, only confusion and disorientation. His voice was hoarse from disuse, barely audible. "Where am I?" "You're safe," Kate assured him, fighting to keep her emotions in check. "You're with me, with Kate." A flicker of something crossed his features. Not quite recognition, but a response to the name. "Kate?" "Yes, Dad. It's me." She took his hand gently, noting how frail it felt compared to the strong, capable hands she remembered from childhood. "I found you. You're safe now." Robert stared at her, struggling to process. They told me you were dead." His voice strengthened slightly as he focused on her face. "They showed me the reports, the funeral." Kate's heart clenched at the revelation. "They lied to you, Dad, just like they lied to me about you. We're both alive." He closed his eyes briefly, as if the effort of remaining conscious was too great. When he opened them again, there was more clarity in his gaze, but also deep confusion. "The interface," he murmured. "They'll be looking for me. The system, incomplete without the primary node." "Let them look," Kate said firmly. "You're never going back there." Robert shook his head weakly. "You don't understand. The Prometheus system, it's in my head now. Part of me, and I'm part of it." His expression shifted to one of distress. "I can still feel it, Kate. Even disconnected, I can feel it searching for me." Carter approached, her medical training overriding her caution. "Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, can you describe what you're experiencing? The sensation of the system searching for you?" Robert focused on her with effort. "Like phantom limb pain, but in my mind. A presence that should be there but isn't. Calling to me." His gaze returned to Kate. "They can track me through it. The neural link creates a unique signature, a beacon they can follow." The implication sent a chill through Kate. If true, their sanctuary might not remain secure for long, regardless of its physical concealment. "Can it be blocked?" she asked Carter urgently. "Shielded somehow?" Carter looked uncertain. "Theoretically, yes. A Faraday cage might disrupt any electromagnetic signature, but if the connection is purely neural rather than technological..." She left the thought unfinished. Robert's grip on Kate's hand tightened suddenly, surprising strength in his frail fingers. "Kate, listen. The Prometheus system, it's not what they told you. Not just a neural interface for pilots." His voice gained urgency despite his weakness. "It's a weapon, a way to control not just aircraft but people, populations." "What do you mean?" Kate asked, the cold dread in her stomach intensifying. "The technology was never about enhancing pilots," Robert explained, each word seemingly a struggle. "That was the cover. The real purpose is mass neural influence, the ability to broadcast specific patterns that affect human brain function on a large scale. Fear, compliance, aggression, all controllable through the right frequencies. Carter inhaled sharply. Mind control on a population level, that's not possible. 10 years ago, no. Robert agreed weakly. But the research advanced. My neural structure provided the template, the bridge between technological transmission and human reception. His eyes locked with Kate's, desperation evident. They needed me to calibrate the system, to find the frequencies that would work on the widest range of human subjects. And now they need me as the controlling node, the human element directing the machine. Kate struggled to process the enormity of what her father was describing. Not just a weapon system for aerial combat, but a tool for mass control, a technology that could potentially subjugate entire populations without firing a shot. The demonstration, she realized aloud, in 3 days. It's not just for military officials and investors. Robert nodded weakly. It's a test run, targeted at a small population center, officially a test of communication systems, but actually, he trailed off, exhaustion overtaking him. A test of mass neural influence, Carter finished for him, horror evident in her voice. And without you as the controlling node, they'll need to find an alternative. Kate's blood ran cold as the final piece fell into place. Not an alternative, a replacement. She touched her temple, where the lingering effects of her own neural interface experience still manifested. Someone with a compatible neural structure who's already begun the adaptation process. You, Carter whispered. Me, Kate confirmed grimly. That's why they'll keep coming. Not just for my father now, but for me. They need one of us to make the system operational. Robert's eyes had closed again, his brief surge of energy depleted by the effort of communication. His breathing had steadied, suggesting he had fallen back into unconsciousness. Kate stood, moving to the cabin's small window to scan the valley, though she knew any pursuit was unlikely to be visible yet. The weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders, not just for her father's safety now, but potentially for the freedom of countless unsuspecting civilians who would be the targets of this insidious technology. We need to warn someone, she said finally. Someone with the authority and integrity to act on this information. Carter looked skeptical. Who? According to Murphy, this program has sanction at the highest levels. Military, intelligence, government. The lines are blurred when it comes to black projects like Prometheus. There has to be someone, Kate insisted. Someone not compromised by quantum or whatever interests are behind them. Before Carter could respond, a faint sound caught Kate's attention. The distant but unmistakable rhythm of helicopter rotors echoing off the surrounding mountains. They've found us, she said quietly, the tactical part of her mind already calculating options. Sooner than expected. Carter moved quickly to the communications equipment stored in the cabin. Carson, are you monitoring? She spoke into a radio handset. We have incoming aircraft, extraction protocol Alpha. Carson's voice crackled back through the speaker. Copy that. Prepping secondary transport. ETA 3 minutes to your position. Kate returned to her father's side, gently shaking him awake. Dad, we need to move. They're coming. Robert's eyes opened, clearer now despite his obvious exhaustion. I told you they could track me. The neural link. It's still active, even without the physical connection. Can you walk? Kate asked, already gathering what few supplies they had brought. With help, he replied, making an effort to sit up. But Kate, you need to understand something. He gripped her arm with surprising strength. They want both of us now. You've begun the neural adaptation process. Your brain is changing, becoming compatible with the system. I know, Kate acknowledged. All the more reason we need to get away from here. Robert shook his head. No. All the more reason we need to stop them, not just run from them. His eyes held a clarity that belied his physical weakness. The Prometheus system is nearly operational. Even without one of us as the controlling node, they'll find another solution. The demonstration will proceed. What are you suggesting? Kate asked, recognizing the determined set of her father's jaw, the same expression she had seen in the mirror countless times. We don't run, we fight. Robert struggled to his feet with her assistance. We destroy the system while they're still searching for us here. Strike while their security is focused outward rather than inward. The helicopter sounds grew louder, no longer just a distant threat, but an imminent reality. Kate looked to Carter, who was hurriedly gathering medical supplies and the communications equipment. Is that even possible? Kate asked. The two of us against an entire facility with military-grade security? Three of us, Carter corrected, and we have one advantage they don't expect. What's that? Carter's expression was grim but determined. We know exactly what they're planning and when. The demonstration is scheduled for a specific time and place. If we can't prevent it entirely, we can at least expose it, force it into the public eye where they can't conceal what they're doing. The cabin door burst open as Carson arrived, breathless from running. Transport's ready. Old mining tunnel on the east side of the valley. Comes out 3 miles away near a secondary airstrip. But we need to move now. Those choppers are less than 5 minutes out. Kate made her decision, helping her father toward the door. We go with Carson, get to safety. Then we plan our counterattack. She met Carter's gaze. 3 of us isn't enough for a direct assault. We need help. Murphy had contacts, Carter suggested, as they hurried from the cabin. People in positions of influence who aren't compromised. If we can reach them... They moved as quickly as Robert's condition allowed, following a narrow path toward the eastern wall of the valley, where ancient mining operations had once carved passages through the mountains. The helicopter sounds grew steadily louder, echoing off the surrounding cliffs. As they reached the tunnel entrance, a dark opening partially concealed by scrub brush and fallen rocks, Kate paused to look back at the valley. The first helicopter appeared over the ridge, a sleek black shape against the blue sky, others following close behind. They're here, she warned, urging her father into the tunnel entrance. Move! The darkness of the tunnel enveloped them as Carson led the way with a powerful flashlight, illuminating a passage that bore the marks of both natural formation and human excavation. The air was cool and damp, the ground uneven beneath their feet. Behind them, faint shouts and the thud of helicopter landings indicated that the pursuit had reached the cabin. Their head start was minimal, minutes at most before the search would extend to the surrounding area, including the tunnel system. How far? Kate asked Carson, supporting her father as they navigated the difficult terrain. Half-mile through the main passage, then a series of smaller tunnels, the pilot replied without slowing. Tight in places but passable. They won't be able to follow with vehicles. They pushed forward, the sounds of pursuit growing more distant as they penetrated deeper into the mountain. Robert moved with determination despite his weakness, drawing on reserves of strength that spoke to the iron will that had kept him alive through years of captivity. When they finally emerged on the other side, daylight momentarily blinding after the darkness of the tunnel, Kate was surprised to find not an airstrip, but a collection of rugged all-terrain vehicles hidden under camouflage netting. Change of plans, Carson explained, moving to uncover one of the vehicles. Air extraction too risky with their aerial resources. We go by ground to a safe house near the border, then cross when they've pulled their assets back to search elsewhere. As they prepared the vehicles, Kate maintained her vigilance, scanning the surrounding terrain for signs of pursuit, while helping her father into the passenger seat of the lead ATV. The immediate danger appeared to have passed, but she knew the respite was temporary. Quantum Aerospace and their military allies would not stop hunting them. Not with the stakes so high, not with the Prometheus demonstration rapidly approaching. The knowledge her father carried, the neural adaptation she had undergone, made them too valuable to lose and too dangerous to leave free. But as the vehicles roared to life and began their journey across the rugged landscape, Kate felt something she had not experienced since discovering the truth about the Aurora program and her father's disappearance: hope. Not just for their survival, but for the possibility of striking back against those who had manipulated their lives for so long. The road ahead would be difficult, the odds against them overwhelming. But Katherine Harrison had never backed down from impossible challenges. It was in her blood, in the legacy her father had passed to her long before quantum scientists had begun manipulating their neural architecture. As the ATVs sped across the desert, Kate glanced at her father beside her, thin and weakened, but alive, his eyes reflecting the same determination she felt within herself. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And Quantum Aerospace would soon discover the danger of creating weapons they couldn't control. The father and daughter they had sought to use as tools of war were now the greatest threat to their plans. And like the mythical phoenix for which the operation had been named, Katherine Harrison had risen from the ashes of betrayal and deception, stronger and more dangerous than before. The hunt had become a war, and this was just the beginning. Author's note to readers. Dear friends, Thank you for joining Kate and Robert Harrison on this journey through the Nevada skies and the dark corridors of military conspiracy. I wanted to take a moment to share what this story means to me and why I hope it resonates with you. At its heart, this is a story about family, about a daughter's unwavering determination to find the truth about her father, and about the unbreakable bonds that persist even when everything seems lost. Kate Harrison represents something I believe we all carry within us: the refusal to accept easy answers when our instincts tell us something isn't right. She's someone who's dedicated her life to serving her country, only to discover that the institution she trusted may not be what they seemed. I've tried to craft a tale that honors the real sacrifices made by military families, the years of separation, the missing birthdays and holidays, the constant worry that comes with having loved ones in harm's way. But I've also explored what happens when the very systems meant to protect us become corrupted by greed and the pursuit of power. The technology in this story, neural interfaces, AI-controlled aircraft, mind-altering frequencies, may seem like science fiction, but much of it is grounded in real research happening today. As we stand at the crossroads of human and machine intelligence, we face profound questions about what we're willing to sacrifice in the name of advancement and security. Most importantly, this is a story about hope. Even in the darkest moments, when Kate is pursued by her own government, when she discovers her father has been transformed by years of captivity, when the odds seem insurmountable, she never gives up. That resilience, that stubborn refusal to surrender, is something I believe we all need right now. The story doesn't end here, of course. Kate and Robert still face their greatest challenge: stopping the Prometheus demonstration and exposing the conspiracy that has shaped their lives. But whatever happens, they face it together, as families should. Thank you for reading, for caring about these characters, and for sticking with this story through all its twists and turns. Your support means everything to this writer, and I hope Kate's journey has given you a few hours of excitement, intrigue, and maybe even inspiration. Remember, the sky is never the limit when you refuse to be bound by fear. With gratitude and respect, your author. P.S. If you've made it this far, you're exactly the kind of reader every writer dreams of having. Thank you for giving this story your time, the most precious gift anyone can give.